Trey.
Right. Woe said the lollipop man, chocolate-covered electric jungle habitat. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. What's up? I'm excited about today's show. I hope that you are too. That said, what is going on? What's up from Troy, New York? Yes, big banger. Big banger today. I got a good feeling about today's show. Yeah, that's right, Spiky. Just got back from Montreal in time for this doozy. Did Second Wind release record? You're getting a little ahead of yourself here, buddy. We're fucking 30 seconds into the show. You might want to wait till we actually fucking talk about this band. You know? Hey, what's happening? Hegs, what's up? Yo, Larry Kelly, are you behind the desk at Bridge 9 Records? Can I verbally abuse the people that are browsing the records in the store right now? You let me know. You know? Is that right? Oh, you caught my Wu-Tang shirt, huh? I was like, you know what? Rock the Wu-Tang shirt today. It's that kind of a party, you know? Joe Frank, what do you say? What's going on? All right. Cult of Misjudgment. Greetings from Clermont-Ferrand, France. All right. Okay, my French friend. Shout out from Poland. Poland in the house. Keep my girls in Poland in check. Here you go. Sheffield, UK. All right. It's that kind of a party today, isn't it? You know what? Oh, you were. You're not doing the. Okay. Steven Messina, Hardcore Shutterbug, is not coming on today. He is at the second day of the Black and Blue Bowl, and it seems that he's not able to come on, which is okay. Doesn't have to be on every show. But you know what? I want to say that I went to the Black and Blue Bowl yesterday, and it was great. Great event. And I did interview Adam from Conservative Military Image. I did a 10 questions with him, and that should be up this week. But you know who? Here's a shot from yesterday. On the left is Robert Hogg from Scotland, Michael Alago, the Hardcore Shutterbug, and myself. That's what's great about the bowl. A lot of people come in. I know Steven's very rarely missed shows, So, but yeah, the bowl was great yesterday. Yeah, they were great. CMI is like one of my favorite bands right now, and I just did an interview with Adam yesterday. So yeah, heads up on the 10 questions from Adam Voss. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to edit it this week. So here is. If you're hearing music behind me, my annual block party is going on right outside my street, and they have like a live band, and they're playing some decent songs that I'm like, oh wow, and I'm stuck up here doing the show. Hey, Kenny Clark, good to see you, man. Hope things are well in San Diego. It's all right. We'll live without him today. That's right, Lou. Go Rangers, man. How about them Rangers? Here's me and Robert Hogg from yesterday. Listen, I said it before. I'll say it again. I'm up on the Ranger bandwagon right now. Me and my gal, Rochelle, we're all about the New York Rangers. So get ready, No, they're not doing any Phil Collins or Billy Joel. They're doing like other stuff. I haven't heard any of that, So anyway, so that said, you know what? You know what I want to do before we bring our guest? Yeah, big up for Robert Hogg, right? Robert Hogg came in. Robert Hogg came in with his whole crew, his wife dragging his daughter along. Robert Hogg was up front for CMI yesterday. Dude was like right in the front, like hammered, getting pounded on. Hey, Carlos Lopez in Puerto Rico. Come on now in the PR. What do you say? That's right. Original 6 represent, right? I was hoping for Boston, but whatever, whatever. Hey, you know what? Let's do this, being that we have a minute before we bring our guest on. A couple of upcoming, I'll wait for the break for this, but this I won't. Hey, this Saturday, by the way, coming up in Tompkins Square Park, Saturday, May 25th, it is our annual Memorial Day weekend show in our beloved Tompkins Square Park. Of course, it's free. It's all ages, all that. Non-residents, incendiary device. It's going to jump off tonight. I think it's our first show for the summer. Cartel, Winterwolf, and Redwoods. That's this Saturday. So I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about, bring that nagging ass wife, bring that booger eating kid, bring that, I don't give a good goddamn. Just get your ass to the show. All right. What else? The same night after the event in Tompkins Square Park, oh yeah, by the way, if anybody wants to earn some Drew Stone and Larry Kelly credit units, we need a hand loading and unloading the stage platforms 2 blocks from the park. Chris Flash's basement, he's got these stage platforms, and we got to load them out, and we need some hands. So if you can help, if you want it, we really appreciate it. So get in touch with me or Larry Kelly. You know, I'll tell you what. You want your crappy ass band to play one of these shows? My suggestion would be to help out. Does that make sense? Help me help you. Listen, maybe your band friggin' sucks. Chances are it does. But you know what? If you help load the stage in and out for this show, you have a future in the Back to the New York Hardcore Roots series. That said, yo, Hegs, we need you, bro. What do you mean Hegs, what do you mean if you're not working? You know what? Get your priorities straight, bro. You know? So Brian, yeah, come through. Yeah, the stage platforms are heavy, bro. No shirkers, bro. Can't have any shirkers. You know? No shirkers. Yeah, you bring the dog too. Bring the wife. It's in the park. So there you go. After the show in the park, at C Squat, Masato is doing an art show with all the banners from all our shows. Rampage Fest 6 brought to you by Hegs. Sunday, June 2nd at the Bowery Electric. Free, all ages. Sunday matinee, upstairs, downstairs. 7 bands, 2 stages with Adrenaline OD headlining. HR, a tribute to the music of the Bad Brains. This is going down on Saturday, June 22nd. A cavalcade of stars will be involved. Eddie Leeway's Legacy, Friday, June 14th. A week later, For the Love of Eddie Leeway with Killing Time. That is at Lucky 13. Then the big banger. Sunday, June 21st. Sworn Enemy, ID, Cropsey, the Pride of Staten Island, Redwoods, featuring Colton Schuler, son of Danny Schuler of Biohazard, and Foul Pride. Of course, the Tattoo Convention, July 26th, 27th, 28th. And then we're doing the Savage Mountain Punk Festival. So there you go. That said, let's clear the deck. You know what? Have I mentioned that this is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, and we are sponsored by New York Hardcore Comics, The Organic Grill, the Texas Silver Rush, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, Mad Vintage, and 126 Hardcore Clothing. They're a streetwear brand for restless individuals who don't compromise. They're about being positive, spontaneous, and true to yourself. For years, they experimented with several printing methods and materials and collaborated with a large number of designers and illustrators, always giving room for fresh perspectives while maintaining the hardcore attitude. Get in touch with them and ramp up your weak-ass game at www.126clothing.com. That said, let's bring on our guest and let's get jiggy with it. What show number is this? This is show number 322. And if you count the bonus episodes, realistically, I think it's about 330 maybe, you know, because we used to do bonus episodes in a bit. About total, about 330, something like that, you know. That's right. Radar O'Reilly Punk Fest in Cumberland, Maryland. We're there. We're playing with the Flesh Tones. Scream's playing the night before. DOA's playing the night after. So if you're down there, yo, Drew, you ever considered doing a live stream pay-per-view at Bowery? Like, yeah, I kind of thought about it. But it's like a whole deal to do a streaming thing. And I don't know, man. Yeah, come through. If you live nearby, bro, they'll make us come looking for you, dude. We'll track you down in Pennsylvania. We'll kick down your door and we'll drag it to this thing. Come through, Radar O'Reilly. There's no excuse. You can be one of the probably 25 people that are going to show up to this thing. So that said, all right. You know what? Enough already. Let's clear the deck. Let's bring our guest on. Today's guest is an American bass player and guitarist hailing from Washington, D.C. As a musician, he's known for his work with the bands Second Wind, Government Issue, Middle Ages Brigade, Rust Bucket, Youth of Today, M Appeal, Dot Dash, Poison H, and, of course, Minor Threat. Please welcome, coming at us from the nation's capital, Mr. Steve Hansgen. Hey, man.
Hello. Oh, by the way, I was not in Youth of Today.
You played with Youth of Today.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, yeah, but
you did work with Youth of Today.
No, I don't think so.
You played with them.
I did?
Well, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say Youth Brigade.
Youth Brigade, yes. Youth Brigade I did play with. Yes.
Did I say Youth of Today?
Yes, and because we were just talking about that earlier, I think. But I'm like, hey, I'll take it. But no, I don't think I did that. I can't be.
I fucked up.
No, it's okay. It's highly entertaining.
He played in Youth Brigade.
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
There you go.
What's happening?
Oh, enjoying a quiet Sunday at home.
Is that a demonstration I hear in the park across the street?
That is. It is, but they're playing music right now, which is nice. So
right. Cool.
Yep.
All right. Let's just jump right into it.
All right.
How did you come up? Did you come up in a musical household? How did music come into your life?
Oh, yeah. My mother's family, especially, who basically raised me, was an extremely artistic, musical family, athletic family. I'm the oldest child of the oldest child. And my uncle, Martin Vidnovic, my mother's younger brother, is a very well-known Broadway actor and singer. He went to conservatory, studied there, and went to New York in the early 70s. He's still there. His daughter, Laura Benanti, my cousin, is extremely well-known Broadway actress, singer, comedian. And it's in our family. It's in our genes. It's basically everyone, except for my grandmother. God love her. She was she pushed their talented children and grandchildren, but she was tone deaf. But she recognized when people had talent. And I was a toddler when I started trying to play, and showed an intense kind of obsessional love with music. And they were all like, oh, okay, one of us. There was no weirdness. There was no pushback. There was no, oh no, Stevie can't do that. It was like, oh yeah, here's a guitar. Here's a piano. I had every member of my family had different musical tastes. And I would go from room to room in my grandparents' house. And my Uncle Nick, who was still in high school when I was a child, he loved the Beatles and the Byrds and the Stones and Buffalo Springfield and all this amazing music. And so I would listen to that in his room. And I'd go to my Uncle Marty, and he'd play show tunes and opera and all sorts of stuff. My aunt loved Motown and funk, and my mother loved everything. So I grew up, and my dad was a DJ. My dad was a DJ on an AM station here in DC called WPIK. He used to bring me crates of promo albums.
So you grew up in a vibrant musical and basically an artistic musical,
very high achieving.
Wasn't your dad an anchorman for the news?
Yeah, he was. He went to University of Syracuse to study communications, and he was there with a lot of very famous, later became famous broadcasters. And he came to DC right after he graduated, and started working at NBC. And then he went from NBC to WPIK as a DJ, and then he went to WTOP, which is still, a thing in DC, like the big news channel in DC, in the mid '60s. And he worked there from the mid '60s to the mid '70s. And when he was an anchorman and talking head, essentially, the producer of the show was a man named John Baker, who had a little boy named Brian. And we met as children at another anchorman's, his kid's birthday party.
Yes, that is Beach Boys' Pet Sounds on the wall.
Yes, it is.
Behind you.
Last week was the 58th anniversary, so we put it up there.
So it got some wall space.
It sure did, but so did the Clash, and so does Elvis.
I see. Elvis. Is that Elvis's induction to the Army?
That's his induction photograph. Yes, Holly and
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, David Patrick says show tunes and punk rock, same thing for sure.
Well, I the way I was raised, I never saw any difference between music that I had an emotional connection to and anything else. If I have always had an emotional connection to music, or I don't. And so it didn't matter to me what kind of music it was. If something spoke to me, I loved it. And it just happened to be that punk rock was the music at 16 that made me go, oh, okay, this really speaks to who I am. And so I was well trained in the art of loving music that emotionally attracted me.
Let me ask you, being, we've had Brian Baker on the show, and I am friends with Brian actually from back in the day, but
yeah,
was he really that prodigy?
Yes, he was.
He was.
That picture was on in his mother's house in the living room. And what's interesting is I remember him telling me that story when we were kids, and I was like, my God, his dad, they were living in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. And his dad took him, because his dad worked for the local radio TV station. His dad took him backstage to the Carlos Santana show, and Brian saw all these Les Pauls. Right. And he ran over and picked up a 59 and started wailing on the thing. He's like 12 years old. And Carlos was like, this kid's really good. And he brought him out on stage at Cobo Arena that night. And in the audience was John from Negative Approach.
Wow.
And he remembered years later, he was like, yeah, there was this little kid on stage, like ripping on the guitar, and that was you. So yeah.
For those that are not familiar, with this story, that's a very young Brian Baker playing with Carlos Santana.
Yep.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
At Cobo Arena.
Yeah. In
Detroit.
In Detroit. Yeah. So you're friends with Brian as a young person, and Guy
Picciotto.
I always get that wrong. Yeah. Picciotto. Wasn't he a childhood friend as well?
Well, that situation was interesting in that when after my parents bought their first house in the fall of '64, way out from DC, in this area called Manassas, Virginia, which had just built the first townhouse community in the area. Mm-hmm. And so all these young marrieds moved there. And it was very, very nice townhouses, very close-knit community. Our next door neighbors were the Picciottos. And Judy and Robert Picciotto and their son, Mark, who was my age. And Mrs. Picciotto, Judy, and my mother were the only two college-educated women in the neighborhood who were stay-at-home moms at the time. So they bonded and had sort of a salon. Mm-hmm. And Mark and I would play, and my mother and Judy would talk about movies and books and music and art and politics, and because they were the only two who could really talk about that stuff. And when she got pregnant with Guy, she told my mom, I think if he's a boy, I'm going to name him Guy. And my mother said, are you sure? Do you want to paint the target on his forehead like that? Do you think that's the kind of name is going to get him his ass kicked all over the world? And she's like, nope, I think it'll be a good name. And my mother went, great, that's fabulous. And so Guy was born in September '65. I was born in May of '64. And, so my mother helped take care of him when he was a baby. And she was like, okay, this is Guy. And my parents split up in August of '66. And Robert and Judy moved to Chevy Chase around the same time. So I lost touch with them. But my mother over the years would talk about the Picciottos and talk about this little boy named Guy and what an interesting name that was. And sometime in late '81, early '82, I was running around Georgetown with Brian one Friday night, just doing what we did, being little derelict punk guys, always looking for girls. And we were on Wisconsin Avenue, main drag in Georgetown. And he said, oh, there's my friend Guy. I need to go say hi to him. I went, what? He said, that's my friend Guy. I need to go say hi to him. I said, Guy. He said, yeah. I said, can I come over and say hi? He's like, sure. And I walked over to him. I said, hi, Guy. My name's Steve. Did you grow up in Manassas, Virginia? And he looked at me like he was caught or something. He said, yeah, why? I said, did your mom ever talk about a woman named Casey Grip? And he said, yeah, Casey. And I said, I'm Steve.
Wow.
And he went, what? And he said, holy crap, I know who you are. I said, well, I know who you are. And we instantly became friends again. And we actually got our mothers to be friends again too. And it was just this weird coincidental thing that happened to me repeatedly in the punk scene.
Did what was like the first live music you went out and saw? What, you know what? Yeah. What was it? Yeah. What was the music that you felt that came across your radar screen that you felt really spoke to you? Like was like, this is mine. Yeah.
The very first thing that obsessed me and still does to this day is Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
Right on.
My dad was bringing me all their promo albums as they came out in the mid 60s. He would bring me fresh copies of these white label A&M record promos, and I just fell in love with it. At the same time, I started really listening to the Beatles. And I'm talking 3 years old, 4 years old. My mother got me Sgt. Pepper when it came out. And that, the Herb Alpert was my first kind of thing that I fell in love with. But the Beatles were the band that completely made me want to be a musician. And to this day are my biggest influence. Wow. That was it for me.
Yeah, we're the same age. I remember as a very young person being deeply affected by Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Boy. And the White
Album. Yeah, that record really just I'm talking for a very young person. It was
very young.
Yeah, it left that left the mark. Yeah, absolutely. Sgt. Pepper. Yeah, the whole that spoke to a lot of young people, that record.
It did. And for me, I was so obsessed with music already. And I had a huge collection of children's music, stories and music and all this stuff, which I loved. Sgt. Pepper was the first record to me that actually told a story that I could see when I listened to it. I remember being 4 years old, sitting in my room, listening to my mono first pressing of Sgt. Pepper and being like, I can see what they're talking about, especially the John Lennon songs. Because John Lennon always was the one that affected me the most. Like, his stuff spoke to me. I love Paul, and George is great, but John just hit me here.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Oh my God, that song! I just was so obsessed with that song. I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
But whatever this is, I want to do what this is.
Sure.
Whatever this is.
Yellow Submarine was Ringo, Heggs.
Yeah. But John apparently wrote it.
This is Pat Baldwin says, and I think this is very true.
Oh yeah.
Herb Alpert was in every record collection back then.
Absolutely.
So true. Like guys of our generation, like our parents, like this was like that was in 2 or 3 Herb Alpert, huge. He started A&M Records.
He did.
Yeah.
He certainly did.
Yeah. Yep. What was the first music that you went out and saw like that? Like, do you remember early concert stuff?
I do. I was 12 years. My 12th birthday in 1976. My aunt Kit took me to see Wings Over America at the Cap Center here in Largo, Maryland. That was my first show. They played 2 sold-out nights at the Cap Center, which was the big arena here back then. It's gone. Yeah. It's a parking lot now. But that was where all the big shows were. And she took me. Wings at the Speed of Sound had just come out, and it was my birthday. It was in May of '76, and she took me to see Wings at the Cap Center. And man, oh man, did that change my life. And then the next show I saw, and a lot of DC Punk guys saw this show, Kiss played at the Cap Center in December of 1977 on the Alive 2 tour, 2 sold-out nights. Again, first night, there was an Australian band who opened for them called AC/DC.
Oh, there you go.
That's the show I saw. The next night was the show. It was Billy Squire's band opened the show, which was not nearly as good.
Piper.
But we saw AC/DC, and like Guy was there, Brian was there, a lot of people were there, and it was Brian may have still been in Grosse Pointe, but I know he saw them at Cobo.
It's interesting because you saw Wings. Ian was talking about his first show being Ted Nugent.
Yeah, and Queen.
My first show was like Jackson Brown. Yeah, these. In that era, this is who was playing the big rooms.
Yeah, and there was no real punk rock at that point.
No.
Punk rock at that point in '76 was in its absolute infancy. Right. Hadn't heard of it, didn't know what that was. And so, what was going on were these kind of shows. To me, seeing a Beatle live was like unbelievable. And I loved Kiss at that point in time too. So that was life-changing. Yeah,
Kiss is a constant theme on the show.
Oh, I'm sure for our age, yeah.
It constantly comes up with artists like yourself who are influenced, not just regarding the music, but regarding the imagery and the marketing.
Yes.
Just so on a couple of things are moving forward, and around the 80s. And are you, the band that I'm looking to bring up here is
Yes,
the
of course.
Slicky Boys.
Oh yeah.
And you're related to Mark, right?
Well, here's the thing. It's kind of complicated. I always say he's my cousin because it's easier than explaining the.
Sure.
I'll explain it here because it's a great story.
Sure.
But his parents, Jack and Loretta Noon,
right,
met my grandparents, Burke and Marge Vidnovic, when they were all freshmen at Catholic University here in DC in 1936. They met first week of school. Jack and my grandfather met, became best friends. Loretta,
what was your grandfather's last name?
Vidnovic.
Polish?
Serbian. I'm Serbian.
Serbian.
Very, very much so.
Yeah, Serbian.
Yep. And my grandmother was Irish, completely Irish.
There you go.
Very. And
it means he likes to fight and he can.
And he can.
And he can.
but he'd prefer not to, but if he wants to, yeah. Oh my, yes. And that's the thing is they met as freshmen at Catholic University. I guess Jack met Loretta and my grandfather met my grandmother at the first mixer, their freshman mixer, and they were literally together for the rest of their lives. And the four of them were like absolute best friends. My grandfather and Jack served together in World War II.
Wow.
And after the war, they all moved back to DC and all, got pretty, heavy duty government jobs, teaching jobs, all sorts of stuff, high achieving stuff. And Mark was their youngest son. He's about the same age as my Uncle Nick. Mm-hmm. And so he was a ubiquitous presence in my life from day one. He was at my grandparents' house the day I came home from the hospital. We've literally known each other our entire lives. And he recognized in me that I love music from a very young age. And he and I were very symbiotic together. And then he went off to school at Berkeley in Boston. And he came back in the late 70s. And his welcome home party was with my grandmother. And by then, his mother had passed, my grandfather had passed, and his father and my grandmother were a couple. So, it just kept going. But he joined the Slickies right after that. And he started telling me about what was going on because he knew that I was looking for something I hated mainstream music by then. Hated mainstream music, Journey and REO Speedwagon and all that crap. I just hated all that shit. And I was looking for something that spoke to me. And I'd heard about punk rock. I knew it existed, but I was kind of like, I don't know if that's my thing or not. But I was really drawn to outsider music. I was drawn to the Velvet Underground and things like that. I had a number of really close friends in high school who had older brothers with great record collections that they left when they went to college. And we plundered that. And that taught me everything. Mark saw in like fall of 79, the third Slicky Boys record came out that he was on, and it was recorded with Don at Inner Ear.
Wow.
This is great. You should hear this. I think you'll really like this. And it completely opened a new world for me. I'm thinking, oh, underground bands can write their own songs, put out their own records, record them here, and play shows where I can go see them.
What a concept. And
he said, yeah, and there's also these teenage kids in DC who play punk rock.
Is he in this lineup?
Yeah, he's right in the middle with the glasses and folded arms.
Right on. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep. And those guys, I mean, there was one other band in DC called The Raz, who were like the first real underground band that did their own thing and had a huge following. The Slickies were the second band to come out of the thing, but the Slickies were more punk and they were more theatrical and they had a more aggressive show. And they had great songs and a great stage presence. And the musicianship in that band was out of control, just incredible musicians. And Mark is a great singer, great songwriter. And they just completely captured my imagination. But at the same time, they were capturing all the other young teenage punk rock kids' imaginations. They were our band. This
is a little bit later, but this is like the kind of, bills and gigs. This is
the Marble Bar.
Yeah, that was in Baltimore, right?
Baltimore, yep.
Yeah, the Good Rats, which, from Long Island, Slicky Boys, 999, Dead Kennedys, and Black Market Baby. Dead Kennedys and Black Market Baby. Yeah. So, First Gong, So, but, the thing with Slicky Boys was, so I start doing the show and we're having some DC guys come on.
Sure.
And every DC guy that comes on is like, I say, like any unsung heroes, you know, they're always like
man.
Slicky boys, Slicky boys, Slicky boys. Ian comes on, says it. Brian, you know, whoever, you know, everybody's saying it.
Yep.
And I'm like, I got to get these guys on the show. So I tracked them down and I had them on the show. It was great. And, you know, they I guess in a certain band, in a certain way, you know, they inspired a lot of the young DC people just for their sort of hometown work ethic, right?
Oh yes, there's no question. They were amazing live. They had an amazing work ethic. They led by example, and we just loved them, and we knew them personally too. You know, it wasn't just that they were our heroes; it's just that
That's a big one.
Yeah, we knew them.
Yeah,
and they were also, it was Mark and Kim Kane from the Slickies who said there's this really great all black punk band,
right,
in Maryland called the Bad Brains. It was Kim Kane who actually brought them to Skip and then to Don to do that Black Dots record. That was the Slickies who found them and brought them into the studio.
Wow. What were the Bad Brains called? Was it Mind Force or
Mind something? Yeah, Mind Power or Mind Force. Yeah, they were a fusion band.
What was the original Bad Brains name?
They were always, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was something like that. It was like Mind Power or Mind Force or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And
yeah, here you go. It's Mind Power. Mind Power. Yeah. Cool.
Yep. Right, and so they were in '79. They were a brand new band.
Did you see them? Did you see them early on?
I didn't see them until 1981, probably 81.
They were smoking in 81.
God. I just was humbled. It's like, you know, okay, I've been in the presence of greatness a few times in my life where you just know, oh shit, this changes everything. And the first time I saw the Bad Brains, I think it was in the old 930 Club. I mean, I felt really lucky that band was from my hometown.
Yeah.
Okay. And they moved to New York not too long after that. But, you know, that was, there's no way to gauge how important they were.
So kids are inspired. Kids are starting bands. Teen idols get going early on there. And then at a certain point, SOA and Minor Threat, first Minor Threat Mark I sort of come together. That happened all sort of within a couple months, right?
Oh yeah, very time compressed. Yes.
Yeah.
They kind of overlapped, really, if truth be known.
Right. Did you see SOA back then?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd like to have seen that. I didn't see them. I'd like to have seen them play.
I mean, I loved them because I was 16, 17 years old, and it was pure adrenaline.
Right.
But you know, they had, I mean, you know, Mike Hampton is such a brilliant punk rock auteur, in my opinion. But back then, you know, he couldn't like control feedback between songs, and it was just like your ears were bleeding half the time.
Yeah.
But I loved them. But when Minor Threat would come on stage, it was like, oh shit.
It was like that, huh?
It was just, I mean, from day one, it was like, oh shit.
Right.
This is the real thing. These are the Beatles to me. This is like seeing the Beatles at the Cavern or something. It's like, I'm seeing something amazing. These kids are my age. That kid is a great bass player. Oh, wait a minute. That's Brian. And seeing him was like, oh my God, there he is, my old buddy. And I need a woodshed. Because that was my instrument, and I thought, this kid is so good. I want to be that good, and I know I can be that good, but I got to work at it. So
was bass your primary instrument?
Always. I've always played guitar too. I always did both, but I was drawn to the bass from day one. Paul McCartney was the bass player. I wanted to play bass because he played bass.
Yeah.
And then I heard John Entwistle from The Who. And I thought, no, I don't want to just play bass. I want to play bass like that guy. And that became my template for how I play. To this day, that's how I play.
Right on. So Minor Threat kind of goes around the merry-go-round, and they put out the 2 singles.
Yep.
And I think Lyle goes to college.
Yeah.
And they end up, I don't know if they broke up or they went on hiatus.
I
right?
mean, six one, half dozen another.
Yeah.
I mean, they broke up because Lyle was going to school. I mean, the thing is that they all, when they formed in the fall of 1980, Lyle was a senior at Georgetown Day School and Brian was a sophomore. So they knew that Lyle was going to go to college the next fall.
Right.
So, but back then, everything was completely by instinct.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter that was the case. If you had something to do, you were going to go do it no matter what. And what Minor Threat accomplished in that 9-month period they were actually together the first time was more than most bands do in 30 years.
Sure. And we've said this before, and actually Siv from Gorilla Biscuits says it in the New York Hardcore Chronicles film that I directed. He says, back then, like a summer felt like forever.
Exactly.
Like, a summer was like this incredibly, and now as we've gotten older, it's like everything happens really fast.
Yes.
So
yeah, everything speeds up. And back then, though, I remember being devastated when they broke up because it was like, oh shit, and they were just getting so good.
Yeah,
they just added In My Eyes to the set, and I'm like, you can't stop there. That feels cruel. But I got it. Lyle was going to school. Brian joined GI. I'm like, okay, well, GI just got better. Yeah, that's good. Ian and Jeff formed Skewbald. I'm thinking, okay, great. Eddie, lovely. What a great thing. All these bands broke up at the end of that summer of 81, and all these new bands were coming together. And I thought, okay, that's how this works. But at the same time, it felt really incomplete. And when In My Eyes came out in December that year, like 2 months after they broken up, I thought, oh my God, they're not. I mean, how could they possibly be done with a record this good? That doesn't make any sense. And so I did what I always did back then. When I loved a band, I sat down with my bass and I learned all their songs. I didn't care what band it was. That's what I did. And so I learned, because I loved those records, I learned all the songs just for no reason. I just wanted to
play along.
I could play them, and I had them down, and I had my own band, which I'd had since the summer of 1980. Mm-hmm. We were not a hardcore band. We were a punk band called PBI. Mm-hmm. We were in Northern Virginia, and we had a huge following in Northern Virginia. We used to play with Scream. We played lots of, we played lots of halls and parties and stuff. And we were a good band, but we were never a hardcore band. So we never played in DC. Didn't feel comfortable with that. But Ian and Jeff knew about us, and they were actually pretty supportive of it. But I was a front man, bass player, sometimes guitar player, singer in that band, songwriter, and I just was so into that scene. And I go back to Virginia and play and do the things I did. And at the same time, it felt like they hadn't finished their mission.
Right.
And early 82, there were, Brian became the guitar player in GI, and they really got good.
Yeah,
GI became like, oh, this went from being my friend John's fun band to, oh shit, these guys are great.
I saw them play a couple times, and they came to Boston.
They came to Boston in March.
They came to Boston when I was up there then, and first show I ever played, first time I ever sang in a band. I talked about this recently. We snuck all the equipment into the Fensgate dormitory at Emerson and took everything up to the 5th floor. Yep. And in the students lounge on the 5th floor of Emerson in 1980, 81, early 82, I think, Government Issue, The Freeze, maybe the Proletariat, FUs, and the Mighty Mighty COs, the band that I was just getting going, the Mighty COs.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah. So you mentioned John Stabb, and,
yes,
and you being friends with him, and he's one of these classic, just one of these great personalities that I like. He reminds me. There's this cat Bob White in Boston. Like, the world misses John Stabb and Bob White. The world is a lesser of a great place without John Stabb and Bob White. He was a very vibrant, funny, interesting character.
Oh yeah. And one of the best punk frontmen of all time, in my opinion. I mean, I had the honor to play in both Minor Threat and Government Issue. Brian's the only other person who did that.
Yeah.
And I loved playing bass in GI, and I loved being around John because John and I were really close friends with a really similar kind of twisted sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I used to egg him on all the time, much to Tom Lyle's never-ending unhappiness. Is that I would encourage John in some of his more out there stuff that he would pull because people loved that. I mean, the audience loved his more out there stuff. Tom didn't like it, and that's okay. But that was one of the things where I part of the reason I love playing that band was they were a great band. It was great to play bass in that band, but John was just such a character, and I loved doing.
John was truly truly didn't give a fuck.
Nope, not at all.
He's like him and Jack Grisham.
Yeah,
really like two guys that don't really give a fuck.
Yeah, just don't care.
Yeah.
Okay, be who you really are.
Yeah. So this is kind of segueing into how did you end up in Minor Threat? Could you tell us the story about going to visit John? The classic story of you going to visit John at the record store and sort of how all that went down?
I've had some very serendipitous moments in my life that were absolutely mind-blowing, and that was one of them where Minor Threat reunited in April of March of '82 and started playing out in April. They went on tour that summer, and they got back from the tour, and I hadn't heard from Brian, and I don't know. I was working. I graduated from high school in June. I was working. I was living with a good friend of mine. I'd moved out of my family house. My family was a dysfunctional hellhole, and I escaped. And I was, kind of independent for the first time in my life. And I was just going to shows. There were lots of shows that summer. And I had a day off. It was a Wednesday. I remember it was August 28th. It was a Wednesday because one of my best friends from high school called me, a guy named Mike Ryan. And he said, hey, we've been talking about going to see the legendary DC go-go band, Trouble Funk. They played every Wednesday night at this club in Georgetown called the Paragon 2. And he said, we've been talking about going to see Trouble Funk on Wednesday for a year now. We're going to go do it, but we're going to make a day of it. So we're going to take, the bus and the subway into Georgetown. We're going to go see John at Record and Tape. We're going to go, see Ian at the Georgetown Theater. We're going to get free ice cream.
And let me just say, I went and visited both of them in those same two places.
Exactly.
When I came down with SSD Control, when GI and Iron Cross played the Chancery and SSD Control, we went to visit John in the record store, and we went to visit Ian, who was an usher.
An usher.
He was an usher.
In his red jacket.
Was it a porno theater?
No, it wasn't. It was actually a legit theater that was showing Caligula, which had. And I think Ian said recently he saw it like how many times did he say so? Like 100, 300 times or something.
That's so funny because I walked away from that thinking he's an usher in a porno theater.
Yeah, it was a legit theater, but it was the only thing it seemed to ever show was Caligula. Literally, the only movie it showed.
It was a big hit.
In years, all it showed was Caligula. It's a coffee house now. Holly and I go there all the time.
Is that right?
Yep, it's a Compass Coffee now. But it still says Georgetown Theater out front.
Wow, that's cool.
So we're going to make a day of it, a day in Georgetown. Then we're going to go see Trouble Funk in the evening, cap it. It was going to be an amazing day. We were like, hell yes. So we went and we walked into Georgetown, crossed the Key Bridge, walked into Georgetown, walking up Wisconsin Avenue. And we were going to go to Record and Tape, say hi to John. And I looked across the street and there was Brian Baker and Mike Hampton from Faith. And I thought, oh, he's home. Great. I'm going to go say hi. And Brian, he had a very intimidating personality as a kid. And a lot of people didn't want to approach him, but I didn't have any problem with him. I always kind of felt like, musically, because we were equals, that I didn't have any need to be intimidated by him.
Sure.
And so my friend Mike Ryan was like, nah, I'm going to stay on this side of Wisconsin. You go ahead and say hi. I'm like, oh, come on. And we walked over, and as was my want then and probably still is, Mike and Brian were talking about guitars, and I just sort of walked into the conversation. I'm like, oh, well, welcome home, A. And you're talking about guitars? That's awesome. I have a 1967 Rickenbacker 330 and a Fender P bass, and I thought the conversation just stopped, and I thought, oh, I've stepped in it. And Brian looked at me and went, you play, don't you? I'm like, yeah. He's like, really? Hold on a second. And he went into record and tape, and I thought John was there, and he comes out like 5 seconds later with Ian, and Ian looks at me and he looks at Brian, and he said, yeah, okay. And Brian walks down the street to me and he goes, what are you doing right now? I'm like, well, we're getting ready to go see Trouble Funk tonight. He's like, I said, you want to come? He's like, I do. But first, let's go back to my house. I'm like, okay. He's like, I want something I want to talk to you about on the way over there. Like, all right, fine. So we get in his car, and he lived with his mother in the Palisades, which is this really nice neighborhood about 10 minutes from Georgetown, right on the river. And on the way over, he said, look, the tour was a disaster. We hate Lyle. We're firing him. We're going to be a new band.
Wait, let me get the timeline straight. They got back together with Lyle and did shows with him?
They did the tour with him in the summer of '82.
Okay.
And they got back from that tour, and I run into Brian on the street in Georgetown just a couple of days.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if they did shows before you entered the picture.
Oh, yeah.
I know they did shows as a 4-piece after you left the picture, but I didn't realize that they did a go around the merry-go-round as a 4-piece before. Okay.
They did a couple of shows in DC, a couple of shows in New York. Right. They played my father's place with Black Flag. They played at Irving Plaza in May of '82, and then almost immediately they did a full U.S. tour.
And we'll get to it, and then came back to Irving Plaza again with you.
Yeah, in November of '82.
Yeah. Okay, go on.
And so they came back from the tour, and Brian, said the tour was a disaster. We hate Lyle. We're going to fire him, form a new band with me on guitar, and we need a bass player. Are you interested? I'm like, who the fuck in 1982 who can play the bass like I could in 1982 and was a free agent, by the way? My band had broken up. I wasn't doing anything. Was going to say no to that. And I was like, but you just got back together again. Don't break up. He's like, no, man, it's just, we can't deal with it. And I'm like, all right. So we get back to the house, and I said, well, look, I'm just going to let you know, I can play every single Minor Threat song on the bass and on the guitar. I know how to play all of them. He's like, really? I said, yep. He handed me his bass. And I just started playing. And he was like, oh, shit. You really can play every song. And I was like, yep. And I can even play the new ones because I had some audience tapes of the shows they'd done. And I'd learned the new songs, No Reason and Little Friend. And they wrote Sob Story on that tour. So I hadn't even heard it yet. And he was like, oh, my God, this kid really does, you really do know how to do this. And I was like, yep. And he said, okay. And then he said, look, all right, I told you this, that we were firing Lyle, but really we want to make Minor Threat a 5-piece. And I had to make sure that you were okay by telling you this cover story, but you handled it well, and you can really play the songs, and let's go see Trouble Funk. I mean, let's go see Trouble Funk, which we did. And we had a great time, amazing night. We went back to Brian's house. The next day we drove to Discord in Arlington, and only Jeff was at the house. So Brian and Jeff and I went into the basement, and I think I used Wendell Blow from Iron Cross's bass. And I think Brian used Mark Haggerty's guitar from Iron Cross because they were the only instruments in the basement. And the three, Jeff and Brian and I, just ran through a bunch of Minor Threat songs. The first song we played was Bottle Violence. I wanted to play a song that started with the bass. And from the second that Jeff came in on that song, it just sounded incredible. Just the three of us playing. And I remember Brian looking at Jeff and Jeff looking at Brian and going, oh shit, this works. And we just played a bunch of songs, and it sounded great. And I'm thinking, what is going on? I mean, I could not, I came to Georgetown to see a buddy, go see a show, and then go home. And my life changed just in the space of about 3 hours.
Life is good. Like that happens a couple times in a lifetime.
Times in your life where, I mean, literally it completely altered the course of my life.
I've been there. Yeah, it's great.
And I went home and I told my housemate, who was a punk rock friend of mine, John Shaver, and some of my other punk rock friends, I'm like, I think I just joined Minor Threat.
I think.
Like, what are you talking about? I think I did, but I'm not sure. And the next day, Lyle and Brian came out to the house I was staying at in Virginia to, hang out and talk and take me back to Discord. And then all four of us play.
Right.
And it was the same day they did the album, the photo session that is the cover of the first demo, 7-inch, has a picture of them on the front porch at Discord House. It was taken that day that they came and got me and brought me back to the house and played together for the first time. And so this time I'm with Lyle and Brian and Jeff, and we start running through all this stuff, and we start running through everything. And Lyle's going, and I can see on Lyle's face, he's like, holy shit, this kid can play all these songs.
Oh, wait a second. Lyle had a smile on his face?
Lyle was smiling. I mean, Lyle does and did smile. He does. Especially if the music
on stage, he transformed into a fierce taskmaster.
Yes, but he was usually right. It just was the method of conveyance could sometimes be a little ass chappy.
It's like I tell my girlfriend, soon to be fiance, I'm mean, but fair.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I went to the school of Lyle Presler as far as music is concerned, which is why to this day, when I go in to do sessions or do anything, I'm a one take guy.
Right.
I do it and I know my shit. I go and I do it in a take, and I'm like, okay, next, because Lyle demanded you be as good as you possibly could be.
Right on.
And I was up to the task. I had that kind of ability, or I'm like, okay, all right.
Well, that work ethic, that ethos is part of what made that band so fucking great.
And I loved that work ethic. I never had a problem with the fact that we practiced every Tuesday and every Friday, no matter what was going on.
Yeah, there was no weak link in that band.
No, it was just, everyone was as good as they could possibly be at what they did.
So I want to talk about recording this, but did you play live as a 5-piece before you went in to do this, or was it decided let's record this, let's make our mark?
We played as a 5-piece. My first show with them was September 19th, 1982. At Terminal 406 in Baltimore, Maryland, Eutaw Street. It was this old furniture warehouse that had a lot of punk shows.
Right.
And we played with Scream, and it's the show that's in Another State of Mind, the movie Another State of Mind.
On.
That's the show. That was my first show with them. We played a lot of shows together before we recorded. Probably. Okay.
For some reason, I thought maybe you guys just went straight in.
We played a ton of shows. We did. This is how I learned to do pre-production. I always wanted to learn how to become a recording engineer and producer too. That was always one of my burning ambitions since I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I figured out there was such a job as recording engineer producer. I thought I want to do that too. And the way I learned was the pre-production that Lyle, especially pretty much as the musical director of the band, put us through in the months before we did the record. We were so prepared when we went in to record that we knocked it out in a couple of hours.
Is that right?
I mean, we put a lot of work in. We played a ton of shows. And, one of the most amazing things about the fall of 82 for me, besides the fact that, oh, hey, by the way, you're a minor threat, was every other practice, Lyle would come in with a song. Like, I wrote this last night. What do you think? And he'd play It Follows. And I was like, yeah. He's like,
kind of great.
I think you should open it. You should open with a bass thing. I'm like, sure. And then he brought in Think Again. And he said, I think that we should have a breakdown and you play a bass solo in the middle of it. Okay. Like, you're going to say no. But every other practice he was bringing, and then he brought in Betray. And it just, and then Brian wrote most of Look Back and Laugh. But we Frankensteined it together with part of one of Lyle's songs that we threw out.
Sure.
And the intro is a piano piece that Ian wrote that we heard him play that we loved, and we stole it. And it, we just worked our asses off before we went in to do that record.
Now, is this the actual recording? Is this when Don's place was in his house?
It is again.
It is again. But this is
That's
Yeah,
when it
when
was in his basement,
right.
in his his furnace room.
Yeah.
That's where the control room is today. It's facing a different direction, but
Eh,
that's the control room.
That's awesome.
That was
So
January 9th, 1983.
so let me get down to some nitty gritty here. So
Sure.
this is a shot you sent me
Yep.
of um of you playing.
Yep.
This is your Fender Precision bass.
Yep.
And is this the PV head?
Yes, it is.
So this PV head,
Yep.
what you're this Fender Precision bass, that PV head, and what is that? What is that cabinet?
It's a 215 EV.
Okay.
That was the minor threat bass rig. They bought it for Brian when they reunited
Okay.
in
And
the spring of '82.
and that is this.
Oh yeah.
So you hate me?
Yeah.
Woo!
That
Woo!
was very much on purpose. That had those PV heads, along with an actual real SVT head, are the best sounding bass head I've ever used in my life. I could get my sound out of that with no problem. That sound was actually, the cabinet was just for me to hear in the room. That little, you can see a line out coming out of the coming out. That was a direct out, an EQ'd compressed direct out from the amp, from the preamp section, that Don put directly into an old compressor and directly into the board. That bass sound is my bass into that head, the tap into the board.
So the cab isn't mic'd at all.
Not at all. It was just there for me to monitor.
Huh.
And it weighed a ton, and those stairs were steep. They still are. I insisted. He had a bass cabinet there I could have used easy, but I insisted on using my live rig because everyone else is using their live rigs.
And what year, Michael LaRoche asked, what year was that P bass?
1971 P bass, with that I had heavily modified with a Seymour Duncan 60s P bass pickup, and a black anodized pickguard, and a Leo Kwan Badass 2 bridge, because I wanted the very best. And I wanted a P bass because John Entwistle played a P bass, but more importantly, Algie Ward from The Damned on Machine Gun Etiquette played a P bass, and that was the sound I was going for Out of Step, and I achieved it.
Yeah. And no, Larry Kelly, he wasn't using a Sanzan bass driver.
I do now.
It did not exist in 1982.
No, but I do now. I do now, and Holly uses one in our band now. She uses mine. I've been using a Sanzan bass driver since 1993. That is the best thing in the world.
So we talked about that I was an Antidote, and one of my childhood friends, Neil Zum Osberg, created the Sanzan bass driver.
What?
Yeah.
He is my hero.
Yeah, he's a lot of people's heroes.
That is the best sounding pedal ever made for a bass.
Yeah.
I don't do anything without it.
And you know what? In our storage room, we still have the cab. We call it the refrigerator. The Ampeg cabinet is still in the storage.
Are you kidding me?
We share a storage room. We still have it in the storage room.
Still in my heart.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
And the SVT head, which we call the Widowmaker. Because it's like a concrete brick. You got to carry this thing around, it'll kill you. You know?
I had 271 heads and cabinets for many years.
Yeah.
They're the bomb. But that bass driver is the thing. That is the beat. The thing is, I managed to get the sound on Out of Step using that setup that I actually emulate with a bass driver now.
Yeah, right.
So it's a legit question, because it does pretty much sound exactly the same.
Were you happy with the way that this turned out? And
no.
Right. Were you happy at the time? And in retrospect, do you feel like it's aged well?
Well, here's the thing. What went to tape sounded fucking phenomenal. And the proof is in what Ian and Don did with the Out of Step Outtake 7-inch. Because that sounds like what I heard in the control room the night we recorded it being played back. In that picture, that's the cover of Out of Step Outtakes, is us listening to the playback of Betray. And which was the first song we cut that night. And what came back through that system. Now, Don, at the time, he had a hand wired board that he built himself. He had 2 power amps, these massive Macintosh power amps.
Wow.
And these beautiful JBL speakers. So what we heard coming back sounded ungodly. It sounded so good. So what was on the tape, what we captured on the tape that night, what Don captured on the tape that night, sounded astonishing. But the mix they did, now what happened was we recorded the record in one night. All the music and the main vocals were cut live in the room.
Good Lord, man.
We cut them live in the room to 8-track, to Don's Tascam 8-track. There was a laundry room off the main room there that Ian sang in. The rest of us were in the play. His kids' playroom essentially was the tracking room, and I was the only one wearing headphones because we were all in this tiny room, so we could hear each other. But I wanted to hear Ian because you couldn't hear him otherwise. But we were so tight that it wasn't really necessary to hear what he was singing because we knew what to do. I wanted to hear it, which is why you see in that picture, I've got headphones. I was the only one wearing them. And I'm glad I did, because Don and Ian, the entire time we were tracking, were basically fucking with each other. And it was hilarious. They were just backing and forth and bagging on each other and insulting each other and cracking these terrible jokes. And I'm the only one hearing it, and I'm dying. And Lyle's getting madder and madder at me. And you can hear it on the tape in between songs, him like telling me to shut up and stuff. But it was hilarious. And I'm so glad that I did. But we cut everything live. It took maybe 4 hours to do that record. The next night we came back.
Both guitars, rhythm tracks were done live. And then live. What? Overdub, an overdub guitar track?
A couple of overdubs. There were very few overdubs. Wow. The main overdubs were a couple of things. Lyle doubled a couple of minor things, like on Little Friend.
Right.
And Brian, most of the overdubs were Brian's solos on Cashing In.
Right.
He overdubbed all those solos. Each solo was done on a different guitar. He used a 57 Strat with a whammy bar. He used a Schecter with a first generation Floyd Rose for one song. We borrowed these from the Art Guitar Tech.
Wow.
A guy named Steve Mekelseffian, who ran Angela Instruments, which is where we bought all of our stuff. He did all of our tech work. And we just borrowed a bunch of instruments from him to do the overdubs, which was just basically Brian doing the solos on Cashing In. And then he had like a Les Paul Jr. copy that he played one of the solos on. And we just did a different pass on each one. But we cut everything live that first night on the 9th. And on the 10th, we came back in to do backing vocals, which I sang with Ian. Most of the backing vocals were me and Ian. Yeah. Sometimes Lyle, sometimes Jeff, depending on the song. And then Brian did his guitar solos on Cashing In. And then there was one more night of overdubs, but I came down with severe case of bronchitis the next day. And I was sick for 2 weeks, so I missed the mix down sessions. And Rich and I think it was Rich and Ian visited me at home when I was recuperating with the mix, and they played it for me. And I was trying to like smile, like, "Oh, okay." I thought it sounded terrible. I had no idea what they were. I was like, "Wait a minute, what did you do? It sounds like shit." And by then, the tour was booked, the record was being pressed. It was too late to do anything about it. But it didn't take long for everyone to go, "We don't like this mix." So what we'll do, we'll put the record out, we'll go on tour, we'll come home and remix it.
You know what? Now that you're mentioning it, I remember, and Pat Baldwin says the mix on the first press is different than the subsequent pressings.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Totally yes, it was. The record first pressing had a different mix. Was the remix overall every song remixed?
Every song. The entire record was remixed. The problem is that it wasn't an improvement. It wasn't, they did some of the things that I suggested, which was like panning Lyle's guitar on one side, Brian's on the other.
Right.
But the mix was very flat. and EQ'd kind of dark and kind of muffled, and it just didn't work. And my bass, they did some sort of EQ on my bass that completely killed it. So it was very muffled sounding, where, you know, the bass sound on the original mix is way better. And so in 88, sorry, Jeff called me. I was living in LA at the time. And he said, we're getting ready to do the CD of the entire complete discography. Sure. Ian and I have been talking about it, and I've been talking with Brian a lot. I want to talk to you. We want to use the original mix on the CD. I said, fine. I mean, I was like, yes, for the love of God, please. My bass sounds 1,000 times better on that mix.
Sure. Were you surprised when this turned up?
Yes and no.
It's like, what? Excuse me? There's minor threat stuff out there that we haven't heard? Wow.
No. I was the only one who wasn't surprised by that, because the second night of tracking for Out of Step, I sat down with Don because I wanted Don to teach me how to record. He still is to this day my mentor. I do what I do what I'm able to do now because he taught me. And the first thing he had me do was a rough mix of the entire session for Out of Step by myself, just him and me. He showed me how to set up a rough mix, and I recorded to a cassette, and I took that cassette home, and that rough mix was basically so much better than either mix of that record. And it had every single song on it, including In My Eyes, Filler, and the full Addams Family. So I've always had that mix with me.
I see.
I digitized it years ago, remastered it. I've given it to a handful of people like Dave Grohl and Nate Mendel.
So it's always something you knew. Yeah, it wasn't.
Ian knew I had it too.
Right.
And so when my current band, Poisonous H, went in to start recording our album in August of 2021 at Inner Ear, because Don said he was closing the studio in October of 2021. So we went in August. We had one night to track half the record, old school, and we did. When I came in, Ian and Don were coming out. And I'm like, and they looked at me and was like, hey, we just mixed those songs. Remember all those songs from Out of Step that we didn't release? And I was like, yeah, In My Eyes, Filler, and Addams Family. He's like, yeah, we just mixed those. And I said, oh, great, for what? And they were like, we don't know. And I thought, oh, okay, well, hey, I'm glad you did it. That's great, because they had digitized the 8 tracks and they went in and remixed it. And apparently, and Don was like, it sounds amazing. Holy crap. And I thought, yeah, I remember. I've never not had a copy of those recordings, but everyone else had lost those recordings or didn't even remember we'd done them.
Sure.
Fast forward to this past November. And since October of 2021, Holly and I went to the closing party for Inner Ear. And I hadn't seen Jeff in years, Jeff Nelson. And he was there, and we kind of got back in each other's lives.
Cool.
He still owns his house. He lives in Toledo now, but he still owns a house in Arlington, and he's been working on it for a long time, renovating it. And I started helping him. And so whenever he's in town, he and Holly and I hang out a lot. And last November, I was at Jeff's house in Arlington, and it was like a Saturday, I think. And I was helping him, and I get a text from Ian while I'm there. Now, Ian, has a flip phone from 2007. He doesn't text people. So I was like, oh, shit.
You got to email him if you want to talk to him.
Yeah. And I was like, I hope everything's okay. And then he left a message. He's like, hey, can you stop by my house on your way home tonight? And I thought, yeah, okay. I called him, and I called him back, and we talked. And I said, yeah, we can stop by. I said, I'm with Jeff right now. He's like, oh, cool. And he can just drop you, and we can hang up for minutes. I was like, sure. So I go back out into the yard with Jeff. I was like, Jeff, Ian just called me. He wants to meet up at his house. Do you know what that's about? And Jeff was like, no, I have no idea. I went, okay. That's not really a big surprise. So I went, okay. So we go to the house, and we pull up behind Ian's house in Mount Pleasant. And he's sitting on the back porch, and he looks like the cat that just ate the canary. Mm-hmm. And I look at Jeff, and I'm like, and Jeff looks like the cat that just ate the canary. And I thought, what is going on?
Yeah.
What are you guys up to? You guys are up to something. And I walk up there, and and Ian and Jeff and I now have a very healthy adult middle-aged man relationship.
That's awesome.
And it's very lovely. And
it's all under the bridge.
Oh my God, so far under the bridge. And I love that, because we know each other as men now.
Yeah.
And it's really nice. And we can laugh about what we were like as kids, but we can talk about all sorts of stuff now that we understand with all this life experience under our belt. And it's fabulous. But when we talk about what we did do, it's often, we laugh way more than anything else because, you know, one of the things people miss about Minor Threat, and understandably so, was that we had a Beatlesque sense of humor where we could work off each other. Everyone in that band has got an insanely great sense of humor, and we just work off each other like Marx Brothers kind of stuff. It's just all, and people miss that. You know, people don't know that about us, but it's true, and it's still true. And I sit down at his table, and he's like, "So remember those songs we recorded?" He goes, "I know you have that rough mix. You remember those songs we recorded that we didn't put out?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "The ones that you and Don mixed, right?" He's like, "Yeah." And he flips up the 7-inch. He's got it like behind his back, and he's like, "Here." And I was like, "Oh shit!"
They were printed up already.
They were done. They were, yeah. He had them, and he and Jeff were like, "Surprise!"
Oh, is that tie in with the shot you sent me? Hold on, I gotta find it. Of you on the porch.
Of Holly and I on the porch. Yeah.
Yeah. Where the hell is that? Hold on, I'm gonna find that. Keep
That's
talking.
a great
I'll
shot.
find it. Yeah.
So they were like, you know, it's the 40th anniversary of Out of Step. You know, we had these newly mixed versions of these songs, and we thought, we're going to release this. And they were like, and there I am, you know, my 18-year-old self staring right at the camera with Don. And I'm like, and you know, I remember that picture. I've had that picture for years. Rich Moore, our roadie, took that picture that night. Jeff documented the entire session. There's like 20 pictures from that session. Yep, there's me and Holly at Discord. That's last November. With the 7-inch, getting ready to mail it out, just like the old days. We went to Discord with Jeff on a Sunday. And
was the 7-inch like a booklet? They look really thick.
Oh no, it's just we got these mailers.
Okay.
From Furnace Pressing.
Oh, I see.
We weren't using, and we just used those. They were very thick.
Got it.
And they made your hands turn black. We spent literally hours that day cutting, pasting, folding, inserting, just like we used to do with the original Discord 7-inches in the living room at that very house. When we were kids, we'd get together and we'd glue and cover and get those records ready for release. You know, people think that they just came in like that. They didn't. We put them together.
Yeah.
They came as just, printed covers with the 7-inches and sleeves, and we put them together and send them out. So we did the same thing, but they were like, "This is a surprise. You can't tell anybody. We don't want this getting on the internet. We don't want anybody knowing about this." And I was like, "Nope. You know, Holly's the only person I'm going to tell." And they kept like, "And you're on the back cover, and you're on both sides of the label, and you're on the inner sleeve, and and isn't this amazing?" And I was like, "Yes." They did
a good job not saying anything about it.
Oh my God! No one.
Because like all of a sudden it was bam, and it was available here, and get it now, and it was like, holy shit.
Yeah, people wigged, and there was this really popular record store in DC called Crooked Beat, and they posted their top 10 sellers for Christmas 2023. Number 1 was Out of Step, 7 outtakes. Right. Like number 3 was fucking Pet Sounds, and I thought, wow, I'm outselling Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? That is never going to happen again. So
yeah. So Out of Step comes out. I remember you guys go out. Yes. I saw a bunch of the shows, including this is one of the, this is a great shot. This is from Irving Plaza in New York City.
Oh,
and, yeah. And this is when, everybody was on stage. And, you know what I remember from this show? What song really, really hit me hard, and I remembered it and looking back, is It Follows.
Yeah.
I remember that song. I remember that song really, like, wow. That song.
Yeah, that was one of Lyle's like just moments of brilliance. We debuted Betray that night. That was the first time we played that live.
You never
And
played. You never played with a pick.
chaos, man.
Excuse me. Say that again. I'm sorry.
The show was chaos. I loved it. It was
Yeah,
completely insane. It was so
We're-
much fun.
Were most of the shows chaos? Like when you guys
yeah, they were. That one though, that one really, that was that my first, that was my first show in New York ever.
Yeah.
Was with SSD and MDC.
Yep, it was incredible. At Irving Plaza.
At Irving Plaza, and Dave Smalley was backstage with SSD, and I got to reconnect with him, and that was amazing. And I'd loved SSD, and I'd met the MDC guys the previous summer, but right before I joined the band, and that show was just so good. And I remember the Misfits being there and being like, "Oh wow, Misfits are here!" It's just like it was.
The Misfits were there in their makeup. It was like
full outfits, outfits. It was so like, oh wow, this is real.
But this is from that same shot. Another show that I was at up in Boston, and I gotta say, this was, looking back, the most crowded show I've ever been to in my life. And this was Minor Threat and SSD at the VFW Hall in
Cambridge.
In Cambridge, and this is one of those classic situations where, like, we rented the hall. We're doing it's a new wave dance show we're doing.
You had that was one of the shows you had to do that.
There'll be like 20 kids there, and then this, yeah.
Everyone was on that bill. Everyone was.
Necros, right?
Meatmen, the Necros. What a crazy show. And one of the things that I remember, the standout memories of that show, is when the Necros showed up. Now, by then, Tesco was living in DC, and the Meatmen were Lyle, Rich, and Bert. Mm-hmm. And so Brian hadn't joined yet, but Lyle was playing with them. So the Necros show up from Detroit with their crew, and those guys were some of the funniest human beings I've ever seen in my entire life. And their roadie, Brian Hyland, was especially hilarious. And he and Andy Windler, the guitar player, they get out of the van, and we're ecstatic to see them. They're our buddies. And they both, and Andy and Brian, get out of the van and go, "Hey, can you direct us to Sunset Boulevard?" And we went, "What?" I said, "Can you direct us to Sunset Boulevard?" And they went, "Oh, sorry. This is Boston, not LA." And the whole night they did that. The whole night. It never got old. Al Baral was pissed off. I mean, they just wouldn't stop. Even when they got on stage, we're like, can you guys direct us after the show to Hollywood Bowl? Oh, wait a minute. This is Boston, not LA. And I loved them for it, because they just took the piss out of the whole thing. It was great. But what a great night.
Look, this has never been seen. You see, these photos I have here are from the Boston hardcore film that I directed. Yep. So I scanned all this stuff, didn't use them in the film, and through the years, sitting on a plane or whatever, I methodically and meticulously label everything. So in a moment like this is a shot that no one's ever seen. It's on that same roll of film. This is backstage at that show.
Yeah.
That's backstage. That's
Lyle and Barry.
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably him saying something about trying to find the beach or something.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Boston. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. So
that's great.
That was What else do I have? Any other? Yeah, then
that show was filmed too. I didn't know that.
You know what?
I lost, I guess.
Yeah, they went over the tape. They
went
over. Can you imagine that? They went over the tape.
You hear about the BBC doing that and it being absolutely devastating. But most of the stuff that got filmed, like our show in Winnipeg, was filmed by local television, but that exists still.
Look at how crowded it is. It was insane. It was insane. It was like you had to fight your. It was. I've never. That's the most crowded show I've ever been to. You couldn't. It was too much.
Yeah, it was just. Yeah, we were on. Yeah, everyone was on fire that night too.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, we're gonna take a break.
Okay.
We're gonna take a sponsor break, but let's try to make our way out of the minor threat stuff
Sure.
before we take a break, because then we can come back and talk about other things. And
Sure.
you know what I want to ask you about? I know playing live, and you know, I went to an event fairly recently. It was for Glennie Friedman's book, a
Yeah.
minor threat book, and who was doing it? This one was Brian and Lyle.
Yeah, sure.
Brian and Lyle, and Lyle was basically saying, he was saying, I was never really happy with my sound. He was saying like live, it was difficult for him, and as a young person,
Yeah.
he really wasn't the happiest guy on stage. Didn't enjoy. I think I didn't enjoy a lot of it. Was Lyle a difficult taskmaster back then? Yay or nay?
He could be. He could be. But the thing is that, you know what? I appreciate that in a different way now, because he had incredibly high standards, and he was right to have incredibly high standards.
Sure.
He expected you to be as good as you possibly could be, because you were there. So you were already that good, because he put everything he had into what he did.
Right.
And he expected all of us to do that. And I had no problem with that. Sometimes how he did that was honestly could be very cruel,
yeah,
abusive. And he and Brian, their dynamic, because it went back to school and wasn't always terribly healthy, except when it was. You know, when they locked in, they were amazing. When they were locking horns, it could get so uncomfortable that you didn't want to be there, because they were very verbally abusive and cruel to one another. But the thing is that I also now, as a grown man, and having known them and known how they grew up, you know, Brian, Lyle, and I definitely grew up in abusive, dysfunctional households. And the way we sometimes communicated was because of those traumas. And we were very young, in a very pressurized, unnatural situation for 18, 19-year-olds to be in.
Sure.
And everyone was looking at you, and it was very strange. At the same time, it was totally normal, but sometimes that could be really difficult. But it wasn't always like that. And now I see it in a very different light, you know, years of therapy, years of maturing and growing up. And I don't think, you know, I wouldn't want to be judged on who I was at 19 any more than I think Lyle or Brian or any of us were. You know, I haven't laid eyes or talked to Lyle since 2003. But he's a husband, a father now. You know, his wife is amazing. Sandy is great. And, you know, we mellow, we change, you know, and I really understand now why. You know, the other thing about that period of minor threat, what you got to remember, is that he had left school.
Right.
He had said, you know, I'm not really digging school. I'm coming back. And his family were very unhappy with that decision.
Right. So I bet
he was under an astonishing amount of pressure that none of us really understood. You know, familial pressure, on top of all that kind of dysfunctional weirdness that he had grown up with, and Brian too. And like I said, me, you know, he was also under that familial pressure about having left school to rejoin your punk band. What are you talking about? We're lawyers. We're achievers. What are you doing? So, you know, I try to put any more now before I, you know, point the finger at anyone. I try to put myself in their shoes.
Yeah.
And, you know,
with
Lyle, I think, you know, I think there was stuff going on for Lyle that I never experienced. My family, who were all college educated, and I thought they were going to be like, you got to go to school. When they saw what I was plugged into and how much it meant to me and how important it seemed to be, because Mark Noon was telling my grandmother, like, no, this is big.
No, this is for real. This is minor threat. Yeah.
You know, and she was like, oh, and she said, well, then you know what? I graduated from high school. And she's like, go do this. Go do what you know. All my kids have gone to do what speaks to them, and you were my first grandchild, and I want you to go do that too. And she passed away shortly thereafter, unfortunately, but I knew it was with her blessing. Nobody said, you should go to school. You should not get in the van with these guys and travel the country playing the music you love. No one ever did that for me. But Lyle had a different story. And I think that pressure was very difficult for him to manage.
And I commend you for having that perspective all these years later. And you know, because as we know, a lot of our friends, you know, carry that resentment or whatever.
Sure.
And in the end, it really does not serve the person, especially the one who carries the resentment, you know?
I mean, what we achieved, what we did was so important. And still to this day, I mean, we influence more people now than we did when we were a band. We're still we're more important now. And how, you know, I can't see, you know, some practice battles or on stage, you know, words 43 years ago, why that would still matter, why that still could drive the narrative when it doesn't matter. We're all in our 60s now. Well, Brian isn't. He will be soon. I'm always 9 months older than you, Baker. Remember that. But you know, so why hold on to that stuff? It just makes you sick. I've been through enough in my life not to want to hold on to that crap.
So let me sort of ask the heavy one here.
Mm-hmm.
Why and how did your tenure in Minor Threat come to an end?
Well, that's interesting. I've had a lot of time, you know, over the years to kind of mull on that, because it was that tour, while amazing, was also a slog, and it did not always bring out the best in any of us. And you know, I fit that band musically like a hand in a glove. I walked in the door and could do exactly what they needed me to do. And whenever they asked me to do something, I could do it. Every new song that came in, I'm like, yep, got it. Let's do that. You know, I never faltered once musically. The thing is that, you know, personality wise, there was a disconnect, and that I'm not from DC. I'm from Virginia. And you'd think there wouldn't be any kind of disconnect there, but there was definitely back then a huge disconnect. And temperamentally, I've always been a little more of a kind of kind, patient, low key guy, very, you know, warm, very like, hey, come on in kind of guy, still am. And I will take a lot of crap before I push back. And the problem with that is when I pushed back, it was often a little too late, but too over the top. And for me, because I said so, was never a good reason to do anything, if you get what I mean. There was an awful lot of because I said so in that band. And a lot of the time, there was really no arguing with it. I mean, a lot of the thought that went into the reasoning about why what we did, really, honestly, was now I look at it, I'm like, yeah, you were right. But the way sometimes it was presented was really, you know, I'd come from a dysfunctional family. I knew what it looked like. And I didn't like being talked to like that. And sometimes when Brian and Lyle chose to turn that kind of cruelty on other people, it was really like awful. And when they chose to do that on me, because of what I'd come out of, I would be very, I would push back, and I wouldn't be, I'd just be really angry about it. And I would, you know, I'd seethe, and sometimes, you know, I wasn't beautifully behaved, but generally speaking, I was no worse behaved than anybody else in that band. And for the most part, I was better behaved than a lot of them. But the thing is that by the end of that tour, I think, you know, they were looking, I think Ian especially was looking to get more control over the band again. And because getting me in the band was not his decision, it was, you know, Brian basically, honestly, threw a tantrum. And
sort of lifted it on him.
Yeah. And although I always delivered musically, you know, sometimes personally it wasn't a good fit. And, you know, whatever. But the thing is that by the end of that tour, even I agreed that this wasn't working. And when Brian called me to tell me that, you know, they'd made the decision to let me go, I really wasn't all that upset about it.
Right.
Because I could already see the writing on the wall with that band. I could already
Yeah.
see they didn't have long for this world.
Right.
And the proof was in the pudding. They fired me in June. They broke up in October.
You know what? I wrote notes, and you know what? I haven't looked at them in an hour and a half. Go figure. All week I spent doing homework. I haven't. But
okay.
So you know what? I think I'm going to look at my notes.
All right.
And I quote you, my friend, regarding any regrets about Minor Threat, and I quote, "For me, joining Minor Threat will always be worth it. I was a fan who got to be in his favorite band. It was like joining the Beatles between Rubber Soul and Revolver. I got to be there for the height of the band. In the end, it was always about the music, and it was always incredible to play that music."
Amen.
Yeah.
I stand by every word of that.
Yeah. Well put. You know, well said. And
in the end, it just, you know, it came off the rails, and it wasn't just, you know, honestly, it coming off the rails had very little to do with me.
Yeah.
You know, there was a whole lot of stuff going on there that I think creatively got to be really, really uncomfortable.
Sure.
And that had very little to do with me. And in the fall of '83, you know, Brian and Lyle decided to leave the band. They decided to quit. And Brian and Lyle asked me to come over to Brian's house, his mother's house. And they told me, look, we're sorry about you getting fired. We're sorry about how it was handled. We didn't agree with it. We went along with it, but we're going tomorrow to Discord and we're quitting the band. It's over. We're done. And we're sorry that happened. It wasn't your fault. And I was like, shit. Okay. But at the same time, I was like, oh man, again, breaking up again. God damn. But I could see it. They were really unhappy.
There was never any coming back after that one.
And that was it. It was over. I mean, that fall was really, really weird.
I like what Ian said on the show. He said, we never made that record. We never we never hung around. We never made like that metal crossover. We never made that. He's like, Minor Threat will never play again. We never made that record.
Nope.
You know, I'm comfortable.
You never shit the bed.
Yeah. and something can be said for that. You know, there's very few bands that never made that record, you know?
I respect bands that go, you know what? It's time to get out. And the thing is that history has shown that was a really good time to get out.
Sure.
At the height of your powers, that's a good time to get out.
Absolutely. So let me take a sponsor break. It's going to be a couple minutes, you know, and then let's come back. Let's talk about Second Wind, which is one of my favorites. And are you going to the Slicky Boys show tonight?
No, it's sold out, sadly.
Oh, okay.
I know. You'd think I'd have an in, but I fell asleep at the wheel.
Okay, so we're not on the clock per se.
No,
we
we're
can
not.
go a little over. Okay, I'll see you in a couple minutes.
Sounds good.
All right. There you have it. Going deep. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Our guest today is Steve Hansgen from Minor Threat, Government Issue, Dot Dash, Second Wind. Lots to talk about. We're going to go a little late today. So probably, you know, however long. We still have a lot to get into. Just, you know, go mix yourself a cocktail or whatever you need to do. We'll see you in a little bit. Yeah, how about that, Heggs, huh? It's going to be a good one. We're going to go on for a while. I'm in no rush. I hope you aren't either. Let's hear from our sponsors. See you. I'm on fire. I'm on fire! Harris, what's up? There he is. F. Carpos. Bring me F. Carpos. All right. Enough silliness. Now a word from our sponsors.
Today, they offer a diverse selection of...
Whoa.
Since 1992, Generation Records has been a mainstay of the New York metropolitan area music scene. Today, they offer a diverse selection of new and used rock, jazz, indie, hip-hop, punk, hardcore, metal, blues, soundtrack, and reggae LPs as well as t-shirts, posters, and other merchandise. They buy used record collections and music memorabilia and will pay you top dollar for them. House calls made for large collections in the tri-state area. Call or email generationrecords@gmail.com and follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
Will that be cash or in debt?
Do you mean debit?
Yes. Sorry. Another eternally satisfied customer.
Hey guys, Vlad from Organic Grill. As you can see, we're in new location on West 3rd Street, right by Blue Note and Comedy Central. The place is bigger, kitchen is bigger, we have more varieties, more food. We are looking forward to treat you guys with great dishes. All Hardcore Chronicles, welcome to Organic Grill. We are going to serve all the events as we usually do, and we are happy to see you guys.
Peace, what it do? Welcome to NYHC Comics at 117 Main Street, Dobbs, Surrey, New York. I'm Debo the Pro with my homie.
Lee Farley.
Welcome to the spot. Specializing in yesterday's and today's comic books, rare CGCs, toys, collectibles.
Got skateboards, old school tapes, Magic the Gathering, Warhammer.
Video games, original art pieces by your favorite New York City and worldwide artists. Let's go. Skate decks all day, baby.
We also have the young readers section here for like 10 and under. The Pops. People love the Pops.
Star Wars! We are New York hardcore. We always rep the scene. Let's get it on.
And we're back. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Want to mention a couple of things that's going on, a couple of upcoming shows. 1 week from today, it is the Castle Heights reunion with Gary Muttley from Billy Club Sandwich and Phil Vibes from Irate. We're gonna talk about the history of the infamous Castle Fights Club in Queens. A couple days after that, Chris Enriquez will be on the show. Of course, he just recently joined Orange 9mm. Lots under his belt, including Spotlights and Julie Christmas. Lot going on with Chris. Looking forward to speaking to him. Jack Rabbit from The Big Takeover, drummer for Even Worse, on Sunday, June 9th. Sunday, June 16th, Ted Parsons from Swans and Prawn will be on the show. And now, my friends, I'm going to announce a couple of new shows. You hear it here first. Here we go. Are you ready? Here we go. Well, actually, I already announced this one. Gabe from 1876, Powwow Punk Rock. This will be great. Sunday, June 23rd. And then Sunday, June 30th, Arnie Stone's birthday, my dad's birthday, the return of our friend Dave Smalley. They have a new Down by Law record out. Him and his bandmate, Sam Williams, will be on the show. Of course, you may know Dave has recently gone through a bit of a health issue, and he is coming back on the show. We're looking forward to it. Next up, finally, Sunday, July 17th, Springer of SSD Control will be on the show. SSD. It's only taken, 3.5 years or 4 years, however it's been, but we're finally getting this lunatic on the show. Another one, Sunday, July 14th, Tony Portero of Whiplash, celebrating 40 years of power and pain. Tony from Whiplash will be on the show. And then, of course, we announced this, Jonathan Appieri. We're doing it's been a while. We're doing a Side Trips episode. My friend Jonathan is a war photographer. This is going to be a really intense show. He was taken hostage in Syria. What are you talking about? July it says July 7th, not the 17th. What are you talking about? July 7th. Did I say 17th? Springer's July 7th. All right. Listen, they're coming out. They're coming fast and furious, Lou. What do you want me to tell you? Tony from Whitlash, July 14th. Jonathan, July 24th. So that said, it's all good. For those that may not know this, I find it hard to believe. Please support the show. The show needs your support. There is a Patreon page. Patreon is the best way to support this show. Please. There's also a PayPal address there if you want to make a donation. There's a super chat function. If you have a question for our guest, do it a super chat for a couple bucks. It comes through in color. I can't miss it. You go to the front of the line. I also want to mention, please follow the show on Instagram at Stone Films NYC. If you're watching the show on YouTube in a rerun, please subscribe to the show right there. Click that button. Please like the show, give it a thumbs up so it goes into the proper analytic or whatever it's called. Who did I see yesterday at Black and Blue? I shot Conservative Military Image. And I saw another band that wants to play, asking about, they're called, what are they called? The Five, something the Five. Shoot the Five. I did Shoot the Five. I saw them and I like them. I saw a Conservative Military Image, and I watched a couple Slapshot shows, a couple Slapshot songs, and then I came home. I didn't want to be out late. I didn't see Agnostic Front. I was there all day. So there you go. That's it. Dicey, very dicey. Are you referring to me, the show, Conservative Military Image? Yes. Springer will be very interesting. Yep, that's right. Everybody's like, yeah, Springer, yes. That said, let's clear the deck. We're going a little bit late today, kids. So don't be scared. Hang in there. Think of some cool questions. Let's have some fun with it. There's the Patreon page. Don't be a Hatreon. Join Patreon. Let's bring our guest back on. Springer. You saying Springer is dicey, very dicey? He's a friggin' lunatic. All right, here we go. Let's bring. You like that, huh?
Yeah. So what else is new?
God,
I'm excited to see him and excited to see Dave.
Dave went through a serious health thing.
I know. Yeah. I love me some Dave.
And I think it's out there in the public. Dave had a serious cancer issue.
Yep, I know.
And he's on the comeback trail, and
yep.
We love that guy, so we wanted to have him on. So let's jump back into it. And sure. You know what? I guess I guess this happens chronologically, and this is interesting because there you go. Hey, there you go, people. Michael LaRoche just did a $10 super chat. Who's matching me? Come on, don't be a cheap ass. There you go. Take the lead. Contribute to the show, you bums. Everybody likes free, you friggin' bums. So there you go.
How much more New York can you get?
Come on, listen.
Come on.
Let's talk about this. Now, I mentioned, when we started talking, that this is one of my. I love this record, and I really, really, this was great. And I think a lot of our listeners do not really know about this band, and this record in particular, because it's like one of those things that hasn't been reissued,
exactly.
and it's not available on for streaming. You can use it. You can listen to it. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like the scratchy vinyl version. I mean, it's
Exactly.
cool. But let me set the table like a little bit for those out there. Is that Second Wind was a band like that I always felt in a certain way was like the bastard child of Minor Threat. It was
That's pretty true.
It was like you guys. It was you and it was Rich.
Yep.
Who was you see in all the Minor Threat pictures? He was like Minor Threat's main roadie. Rich Moore,
he was our lifeline.
Who was a drummer who played drums in Double O
and the Untouchables.
And the Untouchables, right? And Bert played bass from the Untouchables.
Yep.
Right.
And Double O. Yeah.
And who else? And who am I forgetting?
Mike Brown from United Mutations.
There you go. And so this record comes out, and it has a little bit of a spirit of Minor Threat. How did this come about?
Well, Rich and I had gotten to know each other really well through Minor Threat. He lived at Discord House too, and he really was pretty much like the sixth member of the band. He was the guy who, when something broke on the van, he could fix it. He was the guy who helped us move our equipment. He and Lyle were really close. They are the ones who made the Out of Step T-shirts that we took on that tour. He was just there, and he and I always got along really well. And what I didn't realize was that he and Bert, after Double O broke up in November of '82, I think, they had been angling towards making a new band. And they didn't, they found Mike Brown, who was then singing for this amazing band from Northern Virginia called United Mutations, who were fronted by the guitar player and bass player were the two John and Jay Fox, who I'd known since junior high school.
Oh, right on.
There's a fabulous picture of the 1977 Luther Jackson Middle School Military Film History Club that is circulating on the internet, where it's me, John Fox, and Daniel Higgs from Lungfish,
right, as
middle schoolers, all in the same fucking club. And so they were this really amazing, intense hardcore band that Mike sang for, but he was also a drummer. And they had talked to him apparently, and then after I was let go from Minor Threat, Rich called me like the next day and said, "Look, Bert and I have found this guy, Mike Brown," and I knew who Mike was. I lived across the street from the Fox brothers, so I knew Mike was. And we want to form a band. You want to play guitar? And I always played, I'd always played guitar as well. I thought, yeah, great, let's do that. And the thing is that I had never. My first band that I was, one of the main songwriters in, was a punk band. We listened to, the bands that we love were like the Buzzcocks and the Jam and Generation X and the Minutemen. We wrote songs that were intense, but not super fast punk songs.
Sure.
I'd never written hardcore.
Right.
I had sat at the feet of the master for a year at that point. I'd watched Lyle write 90% of the music for Out of Step. And I'd actually, hung out with him at his house while he was just working on stuff. And he was, to me, that was the benchmark. That was the guy that you emulated, but I wasn't actually trying to emulate him, but I'd never written hardcore. And I was listening to the Effigies a lot at that point. I was really influenced by them.
Right on.
And so I was going to try to do something that combined Lyle's style, because Lyle wrote songs. Like John Lennon wrote songs that you could play any way you wanted. Lyle's, songs were songs. They had parts.
Just to veer off, did he come in with fully realized songs into rehearsal?
Generally, yes.
Fully realized, start, beginning,
no lyrics, but guitar, the actual arrangement.
Sure.
And he would come in, and I still do this to this day. I come in with a finished song. Yeah. Generally speaking. And he would come in with the song basically written. We would hammer it out, and it would, sometimes it would change a little bit here and there. Or we'd add things here and there, or he hears something he thought would be interesting to do, but they were pretty much written. And so I started trying to write. I bought myself a really cool 1963 Gibson SG Junior for $300. You know, it's a $10,000 guitar now, but it was an amazing guitar. I bought a vintage Marshall half stack. Had a great sound, you know, and I had, you know, I knew what I wanted to do, and I did my best. I wrote 90% of the music for that band, and Rich wrote pretty much all the lyrics. Bert wrote a little bit too. And
let me emphasize too that something that I guess I didn't really think it through. I sort of made the assumption you play guitar in this band.
I did. Yeah. Bert played bass, and I think he played amazing. And his playing on that record is absolutely amazing.
It's killer. I listened to it. I listened to it right before the show, and his playing's amazing. And dare I say, somewhat similar to your playing. I mean, it's
similar setup.
Tone-wise, yeah.
Oh yeah, he used the same head, but he was smart. He used Don's, you know, studio cabinet, which sounded amazing, by the way, and we mic'd it too, so that his sound actually even more present than mine, I think.
Sure.
And Mike was a great drummer and really knew how to tune his drums and was really involved in the miking of his drums, and so I think that record actually sounds really good for that period of Inner Ear too.
Yeah, it's a little different sounding.
Yeah,
you know, it's a little different sounding, but
you know, the way I doubled my guitars, no one was doing that. You know, the Effigies did that. Right. Their guitar player Earl did that, and I thought that's amazing. So we worked really hard all through the summer of '83 in the Discord House basement. So you know, Minor Threat would practice, and then we'd roll in and practice. So we were on top of each other the whole time. You know,
there are not many band pictures of this band.
No, there aren't. I mean, there are some out there. There's a lot of live shots.
Yeah,
but most of those are in like private collections. You know, I used to have a ton. I don't think I have them anymore. But other people have come up with a bunch too. But there's more live pictures, and these were taken by Tomas from Beefeater for the record.
And here's the back of the record. Now this, you know what? Dare I go to my notes?
Sure.
It's that time. This is the back of the record.
Yep.
Right. And this is R&B Records, and this is Rich and Bert Records.
Rich and Bert Records.
Yeah. And this was just released at the time on vinyl, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it only had a vinyl release.
And where does this stuff live now? Like
it lives in the Discord archives.
You know what? I might have to get on the phone to Jeff. And
well, actually, Ian's the guy that you want to talk to. I know he's got the tapes. We talked about it recently. Right before the pandemic, in early 2020, Bert said that Southern Lord Records had expressed interest in releasing this, and there were, you know, Bert and I were talking about it, and me going in, and he said that Ian had the tapes, and they've been digitized and, you know, remastering, whatever. Mike Brown wanted to redo the artwork for it, and they also wanted to include the demo they did in '85 after I left the band that never got released. That was really good, actually. And I, you know, I was all for it, but the plan sort of fell apart in 2020. And Joe Nelson from Trust has also expressed interest.
Well, there you go. They put out the SSD stuff.
Exactly. You know? I ran into him and Sam Velde like a year ago, February. And they came, you know, Sam was really excited that I had sealed copies of Security here, which I do. I have, like, you know, I had a whole box of them. And so he and Joe came by my apartment, and I gave them, you know, sealed copies of Security.
Wow.
And so there's been some talk about that, but nothing has come of it yet. And my guess is at some point soon it will be reissued.
Yeah, someone
a lot of people have asked about this. More people asked about this than anything else.
Let me quote 1984. And I quote you here. The end of 1983 and the beginning of 1984 was definitely a bad time to play hardcore in DC.
Yep.
When I started my next band, Second Wind, we couldn't get arrested. The only band anyone cared about was Marginal Man, and I couldn't blame them. They were a great band. Scream were heading in a new direction as well. Government Issue made that leap too, but it was a very depressing time. There was a huge buildup in '82 that culminated with the Out of Step tour in '83, and down the toilet it went. Once Minor Threat broke up, it just felt different.
Yeah.
You still feel that way?
The tone of the time. We started out strong, but very quickly our peers, as opposed to, say, the audience, really derided us.
Right.
Brian and Lyle were openly mocking, and it's ironic too, because Lyle produced the record and
I noticed that,
managing us. He was actually managing us because he and Rich were really close friends.
So
but
weird.
Behind our backs, they were incredibly, derisive about it, and so were a lot of other people. I remember I roadied for Dag Nasty in early '87, and I got in the van, and they'd taken a cover and cut it up and done all these like nasty cartoons on it, and they didn't realize it was still up. And I got in the van, and Colin Sears was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." They started pulling it down, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, boy, you guys hated this stuff, and
and what was the gripe that look at these guys, they're still playing hardcore?
Yes. Absolutely, because by then,
Brian, I remember that a little bit. I mean, that was out there. There was
a period of time where hardcore was a dirty word.
Yeah.
And the thing is that like Brian and Lyle were doing their kind of alternative band called the 400 at the time, so they were very derisive of anything punk rock, even though they were both still doing the Meatmen,
right?
But which were increasingly more of a metal band.
Sure.
And so trying to play actual punk rock all of a sudden in DC seems silly. And Marginal Man were pretty much the kings of everything. They were great.
They were great. They had a moment. They were great. They were
great.
Yeah.
I had I stand by what I said. There was no argument for people loving them more than they loved us. Yeah. But what was interesting is that, for me, it became very disheartening. And then I was trying to write a second record, and I had a bunch of songs, but Rich and Bert they just didn't seem interested. And I ran out of room with it. By the summer of '84, our tour had been canceled. It just there was no interest in it. And I lost interest and left. Sure. And for a year, I didn't play music at all. It was the first time since I was 16 that I didn't play music at all. And it was just kind of a weird time. But what happened was, you fast forward I moved to Los Angeles in 1988. And I was working as an archivist and an assistant to the head of the Universal Studios Music Library.
Oh, wow.
Which, a music nerd like me, was a dream come true, because I was working sessions. I got to meet all the Wrecking Crew people who were still working at the time doing TV and movie music, which is what I was working on. And Dave Stern, who was the bass player in Swizz, after Nathan Larson left, and tied into that whole second generation Soulside Swizz world, became my housemate in Los Angeles. And it was through him and his brother Andy, and then through Jason from Swizz and the Soulside guys, that I found out that they loved Second Wind, that they were the only real punk band in DC. They hated Marginal Man. They thought it was, just like poppy crap. And we were the only real ballsy punk band out there doing it like it should be done. And we influenced those bands. I had no concept of that until I met Dave and we were living together in LA. And suddenly all these guys like Zach De La Roca and people like that started coming out of the woodwork. And because we'll get into Tool as well, but I also knew Tom Morello before Rage Against the Machine, and he was friends with Zach, and Zach was like, oh my God, I love Second Wind. I gave him a copy of Security, and so we found out, years later, that we actually made a difference. That our peers thought we were stupid, but these kids,
I loved the fucking record at the time. I loved it.
Yeah. A lot of people do now, and I get asked about it all the time. And I hand out copies of those records to true believers, because I can always tell when someone comes up to me and the first thing they say when they realize it's me is not, "Oh, I love Minor Threat." When they say, "Oh man, Second Wind," I'm like, "No problem, got it. You're a real believer."
Is this the only time you played New York at the Rock Hotel?
Yeah.
On this void. This is a great bill. Void.
Oh my,
Scream,
yes.
Second Wind,
Yep.
and the Psychos. Wow,
Yes.
this is a show at the original Jane Street Rock Hotel.
Original Rock Hotel.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember it well.
Oh yeah.
First show I ever sang for Antidote was around this time. Yeah, it was great. At the
It was
Rock
around
Hotel.
that time too that we played a New Year's Eve show in Philly at Love Hall that was absolutely fucking unbelievable with Marginal Man. Absolutely incredible.
And this one that I put up before, this is the Suicidal Tendencies show. This is DC, right? This Space 2 Arcade is
Space
DC.
2 Arcade,
right?
yeah. That was a great show.
This
That was
is
our
a cool
show.
bill. Suicidal Tendencies, No Trend, Second
No
Win, and Cause for Alarm for New York. This is a great bill.
It was a great show. That was our second show.
You know, this is an interesting question from Pat Baldwin. He says,
Yeah.
did the violence increase at that time too? Security seems to deal with this.
It started to increase at that point. It got much worse in '84.
Right.
You know, it was definitely an issue, but it got worse in '84, which is why the whole Revolution Summer thing happened in the first place.
Sure. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I know you talked about you basically weren't playing music for a year, but
Yeah.
the merry-go-round kind of swings back around,
Yep.
and you end up working with our old friend John Stabb. How did this come about?
Well, early in '85, John and Brian and I formed a cover band called John Stabb and the Cupids.
And the what?
And the Cupids.
The Cupids.
JS and the Cupids. Brian on drums, me on bass, John on vocals. I sang too. And John Leonard, who was then the bass player in GI, on guitar.
Mhm.
And we played all these amazing songs. We played He's a Whore by Cheap Trick. We played Dancing with Myself as Slamming with Myself.
Right.
We played Kathy's Clown by the Everly Brothers.
It was a good time.
We played I'm Crying by the Animals. And we were really, really good. And we played a couple times, and we played at the University of Maryland in the spring of '85, opening for Rites of Spring, and we blew them off the fucking stage. And even they said so. Even they said so. We were on fire. And it was just one of those things where it's like, this really works. You know, this is really fun. And it was my first time playing again in a long time. And right after that, John Leonard, their bass player, started having some mental health issues. And John and Tom Lyle asked me if I would think about being on call as the bass player for GI in case John had trouble. And I said, absolutely. And
it was like a David Gilmour, Syd Barrett thing.
It was exactly that. As a matter of fact, it was exactly the punk rock version of that.
Yeah.
To the point where they asked me to stand behind, like, to learn the songs.
Oh boy.
Rehearse with them. And I knew the songs. It was
Sure.
the same thing as Minor Threat. I was like, I got this. You know,
teenager in a box, sheer
but
terror.
I never didn't go CGI. I went. I loved the band, but I also loved John, and I loved Mark Alberstadt, the drummer too. And so it was one of those things where it was just like, yeah, I've got your back here. Sure. They actually had me stand behind John's SVT at some shows, just in case. And at Worcest Hall in the summer of '85, where the new 930 Club is now today. It was UST Radio Hall back then, old big band place. And I was standing behind the stage, and John went bye-bye.
That was it.
He just was staring at the strings, and I just stepped in and played the show. And then I was the bass player in GI.
Unrehearsed,
but I knew the songs. And so and then once we started rehearsing, it just like clicked so hard. And it was really, that lineup was really good. And we played a bunch of shows, and I loved playing those songs. And Tom, again, was another guy who was like, every practice he was bringing in a new song, and every song he brought in was better than the one he just brought in.
Well, they had a couple proficient years, man.
Oh my God.
Those sort of middle years there, they were very proficient.
They were on fire. And that house was in Wheaton, Maryland. And it had been owned by a family who had a daughter who was an Olympic swimmer. And this was the pool they built into this suburban colonial house in Maryland that ran along the side of the house, along the side of the basement. That was actually a pool for their Olympic swimmer to do laps in at the house.
Holy shit, that's wild.
And we used it to record it.
Wow.
That song "Live Forever" on that record was
Yep.
recorded in that room.
Wow.
And that was in the house. If you went to the left of where Tom is standing in that picture, was our rehearsal room.
Wow.
And so
it's a great drum room.
It was amazing sounding in that room.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun in that room just in general.
That must have been a fun band to
Well, it wasn't. And this was the problem. At the time I didn't realize, Tom could be really difficult to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't recognize at the time, because I was just too naive to know that he had substance issues that we didn't talk about. I didn't know. And now that I, know what I know, like, oh, that makes sense why he was always a little bit edgy, and I'm like, oh, okay. But the thing is that he didn't really turn it on me, but he and John would go back and forth, and it made Lyle and Ian look like Belle and Sebastian.
Right.
I mean, it was psychotic sometimes because John couldn't give an inch. Tom wouldn't let go. And sometimes rehearsals just turned into like blood on the wall. Where's the sponge? Oh. And I'd already been through that in Minor Threat. And I really wasn't, as much as I loved being in GI, and I did because I loved playing those songs, loved playing with those musicians because all of them were amazing. I loved being in a band with John. It got to be too much. And Mark Alberstadt left first.
Right.
And they got a guy named Sean Seeley, who was a really gifted drummer, but really young and really erratic as a human being. He came in, and while he played his ass off, and it was, I mean, again, another great rhythm section to be a part of, it made the tension even worse. And they let Sean go. They brought Mark back, and I hit the dusty trail. It was too unstable. And then they hired Jay Robbins.
Yeah.
And I taught him the songs, and then they got Pete Moffat. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, if I just stuck around for a little longer, I would have been in the absolute best lineup of that band, and I would have played on their absolute best records of all time. But that's okay. I did what I did. I got to experience that. But it was so dysfunctional. I had to step aside.
One incredible project that you were involved in. You mentioned learning a studio about having some studio wants and needs, and you were studio dog, so to speak. And one thing that I discovered in doing my homework for the show, I did not know this, is that you were very involved with the first Tool EP, Opiate. How did this come about?
It's an interesting story. Like I said, I moved to LA in '88, and I was working at Universal, and I was doing demos for bands, punk bands in the local scene. I was, little studios around town, and I also built a mobile 4-track studio, essentially, that I could take to bands' rehearsal rooms and record them. And through mutual friends in the fall of 1990, I met Adam Jones, the guitar player from Tool. Now, Adam Jones Tool didn't exist yet.
Okay.
Adam was a special effects makeup artist for Stan Winston. He was working on Edward Scissorhands at the time.
Wow.
Yeah. He's like
dropping a heavy name right there, and Stan Winston.
Stan Winston. He was one of Stan Winston's guys.
Wow.
And
Pioneer.
And he and I just hit it off like house of fire. We got along great. And Adam, could be prickly for other people, but for me, he never, ever was. Mm-hmm. He and I just got along great, and we just hung out and we talked music and art and just had a great time together. Mm-hmm. And he did. I mean, it took me a while to even find out that he played guitar, quite honestly. In the spring of, I met Maynard through him, and Maynard and I hit it off like a house of fire. And again, Maynard could be tricky for people.
And this is all happening in LA.
This is in LA. This is when I lived in LA from 88 to 92.
Got it.
And I kind of ran out of room with DC, and I was like, said,
Yeah.
I need to get out of here for a while and learn something else. And I landed in a great job that was perfect for me. And I got to do studio stuff, and it was just wonderful. I didn't play almost any music in LA at all. Strangely enough, I just didn't. And at the time, I would hang out with Adam at he lived in this guest house behind the actor Ken Osmond, who played Eddie Haskell in Leave It to Beaver. Ken Osmond's childhood home in North Hollywood. He lived in the guest house behind it. And so Ken would be there from time to time, and I'd be like, God, Eddie Haskell, So we'd hang out, and he'd have barbecues, and that's where I met his high school best friend, Tom Morello.
Wow.
Who had just started to think about forming a band with this kid, Zach, who I knew from the Orange County punk rock scene.
Yeah.
And Sam Veld and all those guys.
Yeah.
Chris, I can't think of Chris's last name. But it was just one of those things where I was just mixing with all these cool underground guys in LA, because at the time it was all hair metal.
Yep.
But guys like us were listening to Mudhoney and Nirvana and stuff like that. And we were in Helmet from New York. And so we were starting to get into, and I remember thinking in 1990, like, this is the next big thing. Whatever this is going to be the next big thing. And talking to Adam, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be amazing. And in the spring of 91, he formed Tool with Maynard and Danny Carey, and they needed a bass player. And they talked about it, and they really wanted to ask me, but they were like, why would Steve Hansgen from Minor Threat want to be in our stupid little band? I swear to fucking God. And around the same time, Tom Morello was forming Rage Against the Machine. Same thing. Zach was like, Steve, duh. And they were like, I don't think. Yeah, Green Jelly too. Yeah, Green Jelly was part of that whole scene. Yep. Maynard and Danny were in Green Jello, or Jello as I knew them at the time.
Yeah, Green Jello, yeah.
That was the whole scene. It was all that loft that they owned on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, we had I'm not recalling his name, the main Green Jelly guy on the show.
Oh, I can't think of his name either, but
the main guy.
Yeah.
We had him on the show. He was an interesting character, yeah.
Really interesting character. He was good friends with Dave Brocky. Dave and I go all the way back to high school. Yeah. Dave and I went back to high school. So whenever Guar were in town, the drummer in my first band, PBI, was Sean Sumner, who was the original drummer in Death Piggy and who went on to form Guar.
Oh, right
so
on.
We're all connected. It's insane how connected we are. But so all this stuff was going on, and they didn't ask me. They didn't think I'd be interested, and I was like, well, and at the time I didn't know what the hell was going on. And so they started rehearsing. They found this bass player from Seattle, Paul Demore, who I absolutely loved. Great guy. He and I got along great. I helped him build his rig. He liked my rig, which was a 60s jazz bass with an SVT. Matter of fact, that's what he used on Opiate. He used my bass amp and my bass and my Sansamp bass driver, first generation bass driver. And that cover was done in my living room in North Hollywood.
No shit.
Yeah. That cover was done in my living room. Bill Mann speaker. Yep. Bill.
Yeah. Bill Mann speaker. Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, in June of 1991, Tool plays their first show, and these are my buddies. So I'm there, and it was like in this loft. I think it was in the Green Jello loft, actually. It was just, hey, come see my friend's band. Hey, Steve, come see our band. Like, of course. So I was at their first show in this loft, and they were fucking amazing. I was like, oh, Jesus. Okay. And they were like, okay, look, we can't afford to do a demo. Would you bring your, we know you have that mobile setup. Will you bring it to our rehearsal space?
And this is pre-laptop and everything.
Oh, this was a 4-track with a board and microphones and a compressor.
Cool. Hell yeah.
And a DAT machine for bouncing.
Wow.
And so we, first generation DAT. And so I brought it to the rehearsal space. And I also had helped Adam. Like, Adam had some pretty, he had that green Les Paul that everyone, is buying these days. He had that Les Paul, and he had a really kind of not so great amp setup. And I took him to this place over on Sunset Boulevard and helped him buy a vintage Marshall head and cabinet.
Mm.
And that's the sound of Tool, is that guitar into that amp, into that cabinet. And I helped him buy that. I was like, he didn't know much of anything about anything, and he knew I did. So I took him with, we were buddies. Took him in, brought him, and I helped Paul get his bass set up. And I brought my gear into their rehearsal space behind the Green Jello Loft where Danny lived, the drummer. And they had a great rehearsal space. I think they may even still use it. I don't know. They did not too long ago. They were still using it.
Wow.
And I set up my stuff and we recorded the music live. We did everything live in the room, whatever 8 songs they had at the time, which is basically everything on Opiate plus about half of this first album was that first demo. And then I went back and Maynard and I did the vocals together. He sang them. I still have the microphone he sang into, this AKG mic that I bought. It was like $200 back then. It was a really nice mic. And he sang them. He sang one pass and then we bounced it and he sang another one to double it.
Wow.
One pass, just one take, live bounces, very 60s. And then I brought my setup back to my house in North Hollywood, and Adam, who lived right up the street from me, came over and we did his guitar overdubs in my breakfast nook.
That's great.
And then we mixed it in my breakfast nook to DAT. And they took the DAT and they had it professionally, duplicated to a cassette. And they were finally able to start getting real club shows because of that.
It was released later on
later on by when they got signed to Zoo/BMG.
Yeah.
In late 91, because we're talking like I did that demo. They played the first show in June. I did the demo in August. They got signed in November. And that demo was a big part of them getting signed. And I got to know their A&R guys really well, and they really liked me. I really liked them. I went to all the meetings they took with labels. They brought me to them.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay. And, it was kind of like, this is Steve. He's the real thing, and I was like, hey,
he's here to vouch for, look, we're friends with him. This is the guy.
They were like, do you know Henry? I'm like, I know Henry. So I introduced them to Henry. That's how they got to know Henry. And it just kind of steamrolled. And in December and January of 91, in December, early December, they asked me to co-produce their first record with Sylvia Massey, who is not only she an incredibly wonderful person, one of my favorite people ever. She's a genius engineer, just an absolute brilliant, and she still is. She is out there doing her thing. She is the best of the best. And she was already amazing then. She'd already really, done a lot of work at that point. She worked on Danzig records. She worked on a lot of stuff, a lot of metal records. And so she and I took Tool to Sound City, where Nirvana had just done Nevermind. And when we went in to do the tour, L7 were doing Bricks Are Heavy with Butch Vig.
Wow. It's Sound City?
Yeah, Sound City in the valley there in LA.
And Dave Grohl owns that board now.
He does. I've sat behind it with Butch.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy but true. Butch and I were like, look at that. And I'm like, yep. I met Butch in '83. He came to see Minor Threat at the Wilmar Center in Madison, Wisconsin.
Wow.
I met him there, and the guys in Killdozer, one of my favorite bands of all time. So I met him way back then. But we went in and we did the record. We also recorded a live set at the Green Jello Loft on New Year's Eve.
Wow.
And then we mixed it at Can-Am, also out in the valley, and came out, and the rest is history.
Wow.
I got paid $1,500. I didn't get any points. They discouraged me from asking for anything more, and I was stupid and said, okay. And that was that.
I did the film about Michael Alago, who signed Metallica, right?
Yeah. Yep.
He didn't get any points,
I got paid a flat rate to do that record, and that was that. And I was, whatever, live and learn. I'm proud of the work that Sylvia and I did on that record.
Yeah, it's incredible. When I saw that on the resume, I was like, what?
Yeah, I know a lot of people do that. They're like, what?
Yeah, Wow.
I know. Welcome to my life. It's been
Yeah.
very strange and very interesting.
But that's a great one.
Yeah.
Let me take a quick sponsor break,
Sure.
and we'll come back and we'll touch on a couple of things. We got to get to Poisonous H, and we'll take some questions from around the world. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. I'll see you in a couple. That's right. Still going on. We're going to go a little longer today. We've already gone a little long, but what's the rush? Where are you going? This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, and we are sponsored by blah, 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 and the Texas Silver Rush. They're a jewelry design firm and boutique store located in the birthplace of the Texas country music scene in Fredericksburg, Texas. They specialize in work with musicians in all music genres to design and create unique one-off pieces, as well as the style and for stage, album covers, promo photos, and social media exposure. Their client list includes Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Greg Rowley, Ringo Starr, and of course, Agnostic Front. Information and online sales are being taken at their Facebook and Instagram pages, and of course, www.texassilverrush.com. Last but not least, Mad Vintage buys, sells, and collects band shirts, primarily hardcore. The DIY operation was started and is operated by a hardcore kid who just loves collecting and eventually got into vintage clothing, specifically the realm of vintage band shirts. They are always looking to buy out collections to either keep, sell, or trade. New shirts added daily at www.madvintage.com and posted on Instagram. Dig deep into that closet of crap and reach out to them and make some dough for yourself. Help me help you, Mad Vintage. That said, questions you may have for our guest, Steve Hansgen, don't be shy, let them fly, post them up. I know people were asking during the show, but circle back, put them in the chat room again, so we can ask him. I think we kind of covered everything, ging, right? Hey, this Saturday in Tompkins Square Park, it is our annual Memorial Day weekend event show that's happening this Saturday in Tompkins Square Park. The weather is looking good. Non-residents, ID, Cartel, Winterwolf, Redwoods. We do need help loading the stage in and out. If you're not a shirker and you're not afraid to help, please step up. Get in touch with me or Larry Kelly. And then the day after that, we'll see you back here on the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live for the Castle Fights reunion. That said, I think we pretty much covered everything. Please, like I said, post your questions. Well, thanks, Soul Vision History. I'm not going nowhere. Listening to this always fun, and today is fun. Thank you, sirs. Well, thank you, Soul Vision History. Glad to know you're out there listening and you're enjoying it. Let's bring our guest back on. Hey, man.
Hello.
Hey, let's bounce. What in between? Let's bounce. Let's take one of these questions. Did you ever tour or travel outside the U.S. in any of these endeavors?
Not in those, no.
No, Minor Threat never played outside the U.S.
No, and GI did, but I wasn't. But it was right after I left.
Right. Minor Threat didn't even play Canada or anything, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, we did. Yes, we did.
Oh yeah, you did do Canada.
Oh, yeah, we played in Calgary and Winnipeg.
Yeah, makes sense. See if I got anything. I just took the steaks off the grill. Still smoking the show. Missed too many to split now. See, you sucked them in, Steve. You know. You know what? This is a good one. But you know what? I think before Chris is asking if you could talk about your current rig these days. You know, sure. what you plan. But I think it makes sense to let's talk about what you musically what you're doing these days.
Sure.
And let me get this picture of Holly, and we did. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your current music endeavor, and then we'll get to Spikey's question about the rig. Talk about Poisonous H. I I gave it a good listen. Really enjoyed it. I
Thank you.
think you said that like this is the most pure and true vision of you musically
Yes.
in quite some time. Could you fill us in on that?
Well, essentially, I've always really been really good at playing hardcore.
Mhm.
I was never good at writing hardcore. I never really pretended like I was. And I've been playing in other people's bands since August of 1982. The only time I was, fronting my own band was the band I formed in high school with my two high school best friends, Kevin Hoybush and Mike Harrison. And that band was a punk band, not a hardcore band. And we had, we loved to write actual songs, and we also shared a very Marx Brothers, Firesign Theater twisted sense of humor that was very important for us to put across in our music. And after that, I never was able to do that in other people's bands, and I sort of saved it for, as a lot of DC punk guys did, for their side project bands.
Sure.
We all had side project bands. They were all hilariously funny. The Snakes being the most high profile one, Mike Hampton and Simon Jacobson. But by the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, my life had gone pretty far off the rails to a very large degree. But I was landing back on my feet. I hadn't played in a while, but I really wanted to. And, Holly and I were together, had gotten together at that point. We were living together, and we moved in together in January 2020. And, we weren't doing anything yet. And then, of course, March of 2020 happened, and everything went to hell. And, we lost our jobs. We were just sort of sitting in the apartment. And she said, "What do you want to do?" And I thought, now's better. Now's the time. I want to form a band.
There you go.
She's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, with you." She's like, "But I don't play anything." I said, "Yes, but you and I bonded on day one over music. I've never met a woman in my entire life," which is saying something, "who was as big a nerd about music as I am, who knows music. I mean, if I can't think of something, I'm like, honey, what is this?" She knows. And she was there. I mean, she was going to shows in 85. She was around. She spent a lot of time in Hawaii after college and came back to DC. And we met and were just friends for a long time before we got together. And I said, "Yeah, we're going to form a punk band, a real punk band. And I'm going to sing and play guitar for the first time in years and years and years." And one of the things I've always been able to do, and I've done this on a lot of other people's records, is sing. My family are professional singers. I have two family members who are professional Broadway singers, trained Broadway singers.
Gotcha.
I can do that. My grandmother, I think, hoped that I would go that route because I could, but I'm like, that's not my thing. I want to be John Lennon and Johnny Rotten, and I want to do that.
Right.
Yeah. And so we just started, what would the perfect band be? What would the band that you would want to be in be? And I said, I wanted to be punk, definitely rooted in punk. That's my music. I wanted to be song oriented because I love songs and I love bands that write songs, not just yelling and, and riffs, which is good too, but that's not me. And I want you to play bass, and I'm going to play guitar and sing. And it's going to have, the foundation of the band is going to be our sense of humor, which we share. It's got to be in there from the beginning.
Yeah.
Our skewed way of seeing the world. The world is insane right now. Let's just go for it. And that's what we did. And so bought her a bass because I didn't have much of anything anymore. I had a couple of guitars and an amp and some pedals is all I had left after my divorce. And I didn't have any of my basses. I didn't have any of my SVTs. And I had my Sans Amp bass driver. That's what I had. I figured
don't worry, that's all you need in the world these days.
Honestly, yeah, we love the Sans Amp, that and a P bass, and you're good to go. As I told
Hey,
Holly.
I got you, Holly. I got you.
And so we just started writing songs together, and it came so easy, and it came so quick. And we had so much to write about of our personal lives, which had been, both of us before we met were chaotic. After we met, things were fairly chaotic for multiple reasons, but also just because the world had lost its mind and we were not buying what they were selling. So we thought, okay, let's just start writing about stuff that we see as being pretty fucked up in the world, but with a sense of humor, with a nudge and a wink. And it came easy. And then when we sat down, I sat down to teach Holly the bass, and I've taught many people to play. I said, I could teach you scales, I could teach you theory, I could teach you all the stuff that I know. But what I'm going to do is we're going to take these songs that we've been working on together, and I'm going to teach you how to play them right out of the gate. And we started playing the very first song we wrote together called Psychic Lie. And I honestly thought it was going to take a while. And it took about 15 minutes. And she was playing. And it was kind of one of those things like when you first start to ride a bike and you're like, oh my God, I'm riding a bike. She was like, oh my God, I'm playing. I'm like, yes, you are. And she'd always wanted to play, but her parents had discouraged it and none of her friends encouraged it. She wanted to do it. Turns out she has absolutely natural ability. She learned, and this was in, say, May of 2020. By the end of that summer, we had written an entire set of songs and she could play them in her sleep. And
is that the stuff that's this stuff?
That's basically that album.
And I know you have you guys just dropped something like
we did on Thursday.
Yeah.
Beatles.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't send you a picture of that. I should have.
Yeah, I was listening to it this morning, but
okay.
Yeah. So, but I just want to say to everybody out there, it's out there. It's on Spotify, the
Apple Music.
And David Patrick says, what does Poison H mean?
Poisonous H, what it means is when Holly and I got together, a lot of people were not happy about that. My marriage had ended really badly. My ex-wife really smeared me, smeared Holly. Our names became poison in the DC scene for a while. A lot of people picked sides and canceled us as people. And we became poison. And when we were picking names, we found a punk rock band name generator. And there's all these great names, I swear to God. And one of the names was Poison.
I might have to use that.
Yeah. It was a punk band name generator. And Poisonous H was one of the band names. And we were like, this is hilarious. Because this is us. This is you and me.
That's great.
And it was us taking the piss out of being poison. We were like, we're taking the piss out of this because it's so stupid, and people love, and honestly, in the end, people thought it was hilarious. They didn't have a problem with it at all.
Is this you performing with?
Yeah. That's
okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
and
me.
I know you met
70 pounds ago.
This is what?
Me 70 pounds ago.
You don't look that heavy here.
No, I know, but I've lost a lot of weight since then.
Yeah, I meant to ask you, how'd you do that?
I
had 70 pounds.
I had a lot of health issues.
Right.
And I had type 2 diabetes and hypertension, and I'd had a heart attack in 2019. A lot of stress in my life, a lot of stress. And I was not taking good care of myself. And I had another cardiac issue in January 2023, right after the new year. Wasn't really a heart attack, but it was a stress-induced situation. And a couple weeks after, I was cleared and as being healthy, I got out of the hospital. We live right across the street from Meridian Hill Park, which is also called Malcolm X Park, one of the most famous parks in the city. We literally live across the street from it. And I just started going out and doing laps around it every day. And I just kept increasing them all.
It was that simple.
And then I started running.
I just got off my fat ass and started running.
Yeah. And then I started running. And
pretty awesome.
Then there's all these stairs in the park, and I started running the stairs.
Wow.
And this was in January. By March, they had taken me off of insulin.
Wow.
By July, I was no longer a diabetic.
Wow.
And by the end of the year, I'd lost about 70 pounds.
And anything diet related? Did you change your diet?
Yeah, definitely changed a lot about what we ate.
That's awesome.
Mostly like just cutting out carbs and things like that.
Sure.
And we're both sober, so there was no alcohol involved. There's no drugs or anything. So that was easy. That made life really easy.
Yeah.
But it became what I discovered, and this is when I was younger. I ran. I started running in high school, and I ran. And I used to run all the time. Well into my early 30s, I was a runner. And the thing is, I always thought that it was mostly for my physical health. I didn't realize how much it helped my mental health. It wasn't until after I stopped doing that and things in my life became really difficult that I started to suffer from depression, and then started to self-medicate, shall we say.
Yeah, well.
And, all that's behind me to begin with. And then I started doing this. I began to realize, Jesus, I looked forward to going out every day. It became what I do. And my mental health, my entire being changed. And I thought, here's the thing. I'm 60 years old. I'm starting my life over again, period. But I'm fronting a punk band, not a power pop band, for the first time since I was a teenager. If I'm going to do this, I got to be in shape. If I'm going to commit to doing this, I can't half-ass it. I'm not 18 anymore. I don't live on pure adrenaline. And so, and Holly's in great shape. She's always taking care of herself, and she's really been amazingly supportive. But I just went out and started doing it, and it became my habit. It's what I do now.
Well, you know what I find? Having somebody in your life that you love really helps.
Oh boy. And who really gets you and who you really get.
Who really loves you back, man. It's added 10 years to my life.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's no question. And being able to share the creativity with her, I've never experienced that in my life. And it's just unbelievable to be able to, just like basically turn around and to her on the couch and say, okay, what are we going to do next? And, or she came in with that picture for the album cover. And I was like, oh shit, she just taken that picture. Like, what do you think? I'm like, that's the album cover. Like, wow. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that.
Hey, I'm happy for you, Holly.
Thanks, bro.
You got it, Toots. Here's one from, this is from from Mr. Wolf, Larry Kelly. Did you ever play with David Byers?
No, I knew David really well.
Did you know him?
I definitely knew David really well. A really impressive musician. I loved him in HR, actually. And
he was a nice guy.
He saw his other bands before him, like Peer Pressure and bands like that. And he also did the Static Disruptors, which were a go-go band, who were fantastic. Wow. I had a lot of respect for David as a musician.
Another good one I like was this Larry once again. Would you still use, or do you still use old stuff like that old PV head?
That old PV head is in Ian's basement. That entire rig is in Ian's basement to this day. Still works. Would I use it? Hell yes. That head, even with that cabinet, it was a great cabinet. That was a great bass set. One of the best bass-selling bass amps I ever had. That head on an SVT cabinet.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Who was I talking to today about? I was talking to Larry Kelly this morning.
Yeah.
I think it was Larry I was talking to, because Larry's my production guy, and carries a lot of weight. We backline everything. We have all the gear, like I told you about the amp. So we were talking about being a bass player these days.
Yeah,
and it's gotten a lot easier.
Oh my God!
All you need to do is show up with the Hansgen bass drum.
The Hansgen. There's always a bass amp there. I know.
And even if there isn't, you just go DI right into the fucking system.
Yeah, you can go direct. Absolutely. No, it's ridiculous.
It's interesting how like bass players have gotten a break through through the process, And
also I have to say, carrying an SVT around teaches you a thing or two about life. I'm sorry, it does. And nothing on earth sounds like an SVT. Nothing. That is the thing.
Yeah. Sort of doubling back here.
Yeah.
Rick asks, I know the word legendary gets thrown around a lot, but as far as Minor Threat goes, it's 100% true. How does it feel to know that something you helped create as a kid became legendary?
Humbling. I meet teenagers and young adults now to this day who, I mean, honestly, Nate Mendel from the Foo Fighters told me the reason he started playing bass is because he heard Out of Step.
Wow.
When the Foo Fighters were here doing the Sonic Highways thing, I was at home and I get a phone call from Don Zantera. He's like, somebody wants to talk to you. It's like, okay. And it was Nate. I didn't know Nate. I knew Dave, obviously.
Sure.
But I didn't know Nate. And he was like, so how did you get that sound Out of Step? I was like, well, it's PV Basshead and it's in Ian's basement, which is about 15 minutes from where you live right now, from where you are at the studio. He's like, you want to come down? So I hung out for that. And, I got to find out, that I didn't know about the, he and Taylor Hawkins, all these were telling me like, no, you had a huge impact. Your playing on that record had a huge impact. Yeah. And I have kids telling me that today. And I'm really flattered and humbled because I never, when I was 18, I didn't think about, 5 days, from now, what I was going to be doing. I could not think about 40 years.
Sure. Of course not. Who could, right?
Is very humbling because, 1% of all musicians ever get to say they did something like that.
That's right. And
I did get to do something like that, and that's kind of amazing. I'll always be proud of that.
Yeah. And I know you sort of, you might, I guess, whatever, but all I could say regarding that whole thing is this.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I can still do that too.
I mean,
I can still play it every single song. After I got into shape, I sat down one day just for the hell of it and played the entire 26 songs.
Have you ever played any of those songs since you left the band? Were you ever like, ever like, hey, so and so's is in town, come up and play It Follows with us?
Fletcher Drake.
What's that?
Pennywise.
Oh, Pennywise. Right.
Pennywise, for a long time, for years, they would come. Every time they came through town, Fletcher would drag me up on stage to play Minor Threat.
That's cool.
And which was cool. And then I started doing a couple years ago a Misfits cover band at Halloween called Evil Live.
Nice.
With Jason Hammaker from Frodis as the drummer.
Wow.
And and Mike Schleibaum from Darkest Hour on guitar. And we do this every Halloween. We play at a local club and we do a Misfit set. But Jason insists, because Jason's the world's biggest Minor Threat fan, that we play one song from Out of Step every show. So we played Trey last year, and then we played and then I insisted that we play No Reason this year.
Do you still have the space?
No, I don't. I'm not even sure.
Was that a casualty of war?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I once I was let go and I was going to play, was going to start playing guitar. I basically sold it to Steve Mekelsessian and traded it in for that SG that I bought, which is the best guitar I've ever owned in my entire life. But that was probably the best bass I ever owned in my entire life. And what happened was that it was cannibalized for parts by Steve.
Oh, Lord.
That Candy Apple Red P bass that Brian played for the 4 shows that Minor Threat played after I left was a body that Steve had around the shop, and the neck of that bass and the electronics and the bridge, the electronics, the neck from that bass went on to that Candy Apple Red bass, and God knows where any of that stuff is now. Because,
truth be told, that bass should be like in the Punk Rock Hall of Fame or whatever, whatever that place is.
Thank you. I don't think it exists as a whole instrument anywhere anymore. I don't know what the serial number was. I mean, Steve might have records of that.
Right.
The same. It's like Lyle's Tobacco Sunburst 78 Les Paul. I don't know. Yeah. We don't know where that is.
That thing was.
A matter of fact, I'm not being facetious here. My best friend since high school, the guy I started my first band with, Kevin, he lives in Chicago, and he bought a Tobacco Sunburst 78 Les Paul about 15 years ago, and I hadn't seen, we were doing a Zoom call a couple months ago, and I saw it and I was like, Jesus Christ, that might be Lyle's guitar. It was the same year, exactly the same color, the same case, the same kind of case. It was a very specific case.
Wow.
And I don't know for a fact that that isn't Lyle's guitar, because Lyle sold it. We have no idea where it ended up.
Imagine that. I'm selling it.
Yeah.
You know who probably has it? Because he has everything else.
Yes.
Brian Baker probably has it.
He might. I don't think so.
I'm just saying Brian Baker's got 5,000 guitars.
Exactly. I have 2.
Yeah. It's great.
It's not how many you have, it's how you use them.
He uses them.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
But there's some stuff like that. Honestly, I don't know where it is, but it's nice to know that some of that stuff that Ian still has it.
Yeah. Well, he's good like that. He
is
in his own way. He's very what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say nostalgic, but he's invested in keeping these artifacts.
Yes.
Yes. Within his realm, and not.
I've seen that with my own eyes. I've seen things. He showed me things that he has that I was just astonished that he had. He has the cigar box that Ian and Jeff put the money into that they started Discord Records with.
Oh,
he has the tour notebook and the cash bag that we took on the Out of Step tour.
And it's all in that house still.
He's got all of that stuff. And I mean, thank God.
Yeah.
He showed me the multi-tracks for Out of Step. That's how I realized what day we recorded it. I always knew it was in January. I just couldn't remember the day. And
what did Don? What was that? Was that recorded Was that 16 track 2-inch?
8.
Okay.
8 half-inch 8-track.
Oh my God.
Yep. On hand-built board. And he had Macintosh tube amps for the power amps, JBL studio monitors.
Wow.
He built his own mic pre's. He built a lot of his outboard gear. He didn't have a lot of stuff, but the man knew how to use it.
You mentioned something before that I can relate to, which was you record something in the studio, you listen to it on the studio monitors. It sounds friggin' great.
Yeah.
You get a dub, you listen to it on the car on the way home, and you're like, "What the fuck happened?" we went through this when Antidote recorded "No Peace in Our Time." We went back and forth 4 or 5 times, and the studio claiming, no, there's no problem with the studio monitors. They're a little bass heavy. Meanwhile, the difference between listening to it in the studio and listening to it in the car or wherever was miles apart.
Miles apart.
Hate that, man.
If the monitors aren't EQ'd just so,
right,
the mixes will not translate.
Yeah.
The best room that I ever worked in that was so accurate was Sound City, the original Sound City. That Neve board and the monitors they had there, when you listened to something there and then you took back then it was a cassette to your car, it sounded, you were hearing what you heard.
And you worked on the Tool stuff in Sound City?
In Sound City, yeah. Yep. I mean, really just after Nirvana had done Nevermind.
Talk about that's right. And it was the Neve board, right?
Yeah, it was that Neve board. Oh boy.
Yeah.
That board. Oh my God. And they had
talk about it
too.
When you were working in there, I mean, and that it was still open for many years.
Oh, for many years. Yeah.
But did you feel the set in a historical sense? Did you feel the weight of history in that studio?
Oh yeah, but the thing is that when you walk in there and it seemed a little run down. It's in a really weird part of the valley.
That's what they said. They said it was
Van
like
Nuys. It's in Van Nuys, which is like the porn capital of the world. It's kind of seedy.
Yeah,
and
it was like in a strip mall, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in a strip mall.
Yeah,
like in Van Nuys, it was really and also in kind of an industrial area. A lot of the studios in the valley were in industrial areas. That's where actually, Foo Fighters, their place is within walking distance of where Sound City used to be.
I see.
So when they transferred the board from there to there, it was like literally 4 blocks.
Well, shit, Fleetwood Mac Rumors was recorded there.
Rumors was recorded there. Damn the Torpedoes was recorded there. which is
Grateful
amazing.
Dead Terrapin Station was recorded there.
A lot of amazing.
I mean, it goes, and then there's all the hair metal stuff that was recorded there.
There was so much stuff done there. I mean, the second Weezer album, which a lot of people, was done there.
Nirvana,
Nirvana, recorded Nevermind there. I mean, a lot of people recorded great records there. Most of Dream Police was done there.
Wow.
And it was when we walked in there, I remember looking at the records on the wall going, shit, that's a lot to live up to. Because at that point, we're talking December of 91. No one's talking about anything but Nevermind in December of 91. So
it reminds me of Don Fury, who recorded all the New York stuff, legendary. Don Fury said that after he did the Gorilla Biscuits record, for years afterwards, they would come to him and go, we want it to sound like the Gorilla Biscuits
exactly
record. So I assume that after Nevermind, that studio was probably pretty busy with, we want the drums to sound like Nevermind,
Oh, they were super busy. I mean, they went from being like, a moderately busy studio, kind of, sort of, not really, to insane.
I guess at that point,
constantly.
I guess, I mean, I saw the doc, so I know, but I guess certain things, there's an ebb and a flow to it, right? Which studios, you just have to upgrade the equipment every now and then. But
the thing is, what they had at Sound City in 91, honestly, is about as good as you can get for analog recording.
Sure.
I mean, honestly, they had API, modules. They had tube limiters. They had Fairchilds. They had insane, basic analog gear there and you really didn't need much of anything else.
Well, is it that they really? I don't remember, but did they have the trouble sort of making the jump to digital, or did something not translate for them?
I think there was an issue with that. I mean, the thing is, their analog gear
remember that
so good,
and
was so dialed in that I think it was problematic for them. I don't, it's hard to say, but I think it was.
Being that we're still here, I'm circling back now to 2012. You got the call.
Yes.
And you ended up playing some Youth Brigade shows. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
With your old friend Bert.
With Bert and Danny too. I've been in a lot.
Right. And Bert, who's a pretty proficient photographer these days, right?
He certainly is. He has been for a long time. Yeah.
How did this come about?
The shows were there was going to be 2 nights of shows at the Black Cat here in DC as a benefit for Scott Crawford's DC punk rock documentary Salad Days.
Salad Days, right.
So all these bands are going to be reuniting. DAG, there's going to be Government Issue, Black Market Baby. What was Andy Rappaport's band? Kingface.
All right.
These bands are going to, and Black Market, like I said, Black Market Baby, and the Youth Brigade were going to do it. But Tom Clinton, the guy who'd been the guitar player in Youth Brigade, lives in LA now, or lives in California now, hadn't played since 1982, and was definitely not going to do it. And Danny and Ian were talking, and Ian said, call Steve.
That's cool.
And Danny and I go way, 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 way back. I mean, we've been friends. We played in lots of bands together over the years. And he called me and said, do you want to do it? And I said, yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me, but is Bert still playing that bass?
He's playing that bass, and I'm playing that guitar. That's the Second Wind SG.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh my God. It's like those pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, was I fat then. Woo!
Yeah, boy, you're a big boy there, huh?
Well, I was a drug addict.
All right. Well.
But I can still play my ass off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really happy, Steve, that you were here today, and
Me too.
and like we talked about a little bit off the record. I'm 15 years clean and sober, and I know you've been taking care of yourself for many years now, and I'm really happy to hear that, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it was tough, but I just didn't want to be that guy anymore. I'd come too far away from where I started.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what's interesting is that those Youth Brigade shows, we played the Black Cat show. in December of 2012, and then we played February 2013 at 930 Club, and with Scream and Trouble Funk, and it was big punk funk show, and both shows were really good.
Yeah,
we played really well, and it was amazing.
Why only 2 shows? Was it just sort of typical? You DC guys.
I don't know.
Guys, always with you fucking DC guys. We did 2 and that was it. That's it.
Well, Bert.
We played the 930 Club and.
Well, Bert lives in Scotland. Bert at the time lived in Scotland.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he'd moved to Scotland with his wife, and he lives in Germany now.
Right.
So he wasn't going to be here to do it.
Right.
It's always great to see him. It's always great to have Bert around, but he lives in Germany now.
Got it. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So so
I always remember him as
more than 2 shows. I was amazed.
I'm sorry. I remember Bert as being a very kind soul back in the in the early 80s. He was a very, very kind soul.
Such a kind soul. Still is.
Yeah.
He's still just a classy, decent guy. He always was.
I liked him, and I liked Eric that sang for Double O. He was.
Yeah, Eric is really cool too. Yep, super smart guy.
You know what? I wanted to ask you. What we got to track down. What's Rich from Second Wind? Where's he?
He is outside of Philadelphia now.
Yeah.
He has his own business. I'm not sure. It's I can't remember what it is exactly.
Is he on Instagram or Facebook? I got.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
I got to track him down.
Yeah, he is. He and Jeff go back to junior high. He and Jeff met. Jeff came. Jeff's a State Department brat, and his family was in Chevy Chase here in DC, but they were out of the country for most of his childhood. They didn't land in DC permanently until he was in junior high, and he and Rich became best friends back then, and they have remained really close. Jeff is incredible about maintaining friendships. He's such a great friend. I love him very much. And he makes sure that we stay in touch with each other. He's the glue. He's the guy who's the glue. And so he and Rich are still friends.
I didn't realize that Jeff doesn't live in DC. I guess he comes back and forth.
He goes back and forth. He had a dream of owning a Victorian mansion, and he was not going to fulfill that dream in DC.
That's right.
So he started looking around.
Right.
He found one in Toledo that he could afford.
Got it.
So he moved to Toledo. And he kept the house in Arlington that he owned and rented it out. And that's what he does. And he travels back and forth. And, whenever he's in town, we see him, and it's always great. And then his mother lives in Iowa. She's in her 90s. So he goes to visit her there. And then he and sometimes he travels. He's a backer for the DC punk documentary, Punk the Capital.
Yeah.
Amazing film. And
I saw that.
He just finished another European tour with that. So he and James.
So Jeff is involved with that film?
Yes. Yeah.
What's one of the I was in touch with one of the directors for a while.
Probably James.
Yeah.
And
I think
Tim Levine too, who works at Discord.
Yeah. So okay, that's I got to get Jeff on the show.
Oh yeah.
So that said,
I want to be on that show with him because we have a lot of fun.
Well, I'll pop you on. Hey, so and so wants to. I'll do one. I do it before I go. Hey, Jeff, an old friend wants to say hello. Boom.
Do that. You know what? Will you do that for me with Springer and Dave?
Oh yeah, sure.
Because I would fucking love to be on with those two guys. That would be off the
Dave would be easier.
Oh, I'm sure.
Springer is just going to be lunacy.
Yeah, but the thing is, Springer and I always got on great.
All right.
And I'm sure it'll be very entertaining. But Dave and I have like a really deep bond.
Yeah, I'd say Dave because Springer is just going to be like riding a bucking bronco.
Certainly. Well, I'll tune in. Don't worry about that. If you want to throw me in for a second to say, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah, we'll do that with Dave. We'll do that with Dave. What's the date? The date is
in June, I think.
It's a while. It's here you go. It's Sunday, June 30th. My
Yeah.
dad's birthday.
There you go.
My dad's birthday.
I know
So-
Sam too. I love Sam too.
Okay, so we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that. Is there anybody you want to thank, shout out? Anybody you as we head towards the door here?
Wow, so many people. I just, thank Brian and Lyle and Ian and Jeff. Because wow, what a moment. No matter where we've gone in the 40 years or in the last couple, I really appreciate that I was able to do that. And it was, it was because Brian asked me to do it. But there's so many people, Bert and Rich were amazing. Mike Brown, John Stabb, God love John Stabb. So many people, and Holly, for sort of rescuing me and making life worth living again. And my son, Jack, I don't know if he's watching, I haven't seen him in 5 years, but hopefully he's around, and him too.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Keep in touch. Hey, Holly. Thank you very much for steering him in here.
Hey, aloha. Thank you.
Thank you, hon. But and listen, if you guys come up to New York and play, you got to let me know. Okay?
Oh no, we will.
Oh, we're definitely gonna come see you.
Oh, and by the way, just saying, while I'm still here,
yep,
we are looking for a new drummer.
Okay.
So if anyone in DC is interested, we are looking for a new drummer.
There you go. You heard it here first.
Yep.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Take care.
Yep.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Another one in the books. Thank you, Paulie. Yes, it was a great show. And it was a great, yes. Jonathan, thank you, buddy. Thanks for this one. Super. Yeah, it was great. It was a good one. And I knew it was going to be a marathon, another legendary show. Yeah, it was good. There's lots to talk about. I knew it was going to be a long one. And that's why I left the Black and Blue Bowl last night early. Like, I was really keyed into this one. Absolutely great guy, honest guy. We appreciate that. Like when you come on the show, it's like truth serum when you come on this show. Like nobody comes on here and bullshits us. Everybody gives it to us straight. We talk about, it's the tie that binds us together. It's music. We're not here to get into the bullshit, the politics of life. Thank you, John. It was a good one. You love the long streams. Yeah. No, I'm not going to go to the B&B tonight. I'd like to see Drain play, but honestly, when the show's done, I just want to eat something and just decompress a little bit. And it's hard to go running out. I'm in front of the computer from 6:30 a.m. until it's really almost 12 hours. So, I'm not so quick to go running out. I like to just relax. Yeah, right. It doesn't seem like 3 hours when you have an interesting guest like Steve. Yeah. This channel archives all the punk rock stories. Yeah, kinda. What's next? I was thinking I could take pieces of shows like Ian talking about Out of Step, Steve talking about Out of Step, Brian talking from Out of Step, and sort of put it together as sort of a kind of neat documentary-ish clip. I might get to that someday if there's a nuclear holocaust and I'm stranded in a cabin in a snowstorm for like a couple of months. Other than that, it ain't gonna happen. That said, well, thank you, Damien. Deep, smart, and intelligent guy. Yeah, great show. Thank you. And let me say, people come up to me at the bowl and everything and say, "Hey, I watched the show. Thank you so much." That means a lot to me. It means a lot when I'm out here and I'm accessible. If anybody wants to reach out, it's what I do. That and my girlfriend going, "Get off the phone!" Hey, I'm not on Facebook. All right. That said, I'll see you. Hopefully, I'm going to see you in Tompkins Square Park on Saturday. Please come through. This is important. You know, a couple years into it. This is important stuff. Saturday I'll be in the park. Sunday I'll be back here. This was the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Till next time, my friend, do good things, and good things will come to you.